kumva radiyo urumuri uzabeshwa byinshi.
iyi radiyo mwumva ni radiyo urumuri,
ijwi rya sosiyete sivile nyarwanda,
ijwi rya buri munyarwanda.
nusiba kumva radiyo urumuri uzabeshwa byinshi.
Tutazi n'abariho n'abatari shaka kukwigana nyagasani nyamara bikananira ariko ndabyifuza ihata ivanjiri nyagasani ni wowe nzira nziza nyagasani ni wowe shingiro nyagasani ni wowe kuri nyakuri ubuzima budashira ubuzima tuzi nubwo tutazi bw'abariho n'abatakiriho umwami umutegetsi n'umubyeyi wowe rukundo nyarwo kuba kwemera shaka kukwigana nyagasani ariko ndabyifuza nemera ko nzabaho ubuziraherezo ahazira icyaha n'intege nke ahazira inzango n'imidugararo aho ubana n'abamarayika aho ubana n'abamarayika aho Yezu yaduteguriye we mwami umutegetsi n'umubyeyi niwe rukundo nyarwo kuba kwemera shaka kumwigana nyagasani nyamara bikananira ariko ndabyifuza nemera kiriziya umuryango wawe nemera roho mutagatifu uwo dukesha urukundo n'amahoro amahoro n'urukundo nyabyo by'ubuzima tuzi nubwo tutazi bw'abariho n'abatakiriho umwami umutegetsi n'umubyeyi wowe rukundo nyarwo kuba kwemera shaka kugusanga nyagasani nyamara bikananira ariko ndabyifuza shaka kukwigana nyagasani nyamara bikananira ariko ndabyifuza
i Kigali.
nyagasani nyagasani muyobozi w'imitima ni wowe niyeguriye yawe soko y'ubuzima ndakwinginze ngundokore sinzigera mbyibagirwa bizambera nk'urwibutso binkomeze mu kwemera nzajye mpora ngusingiza nyagasani nyagasani muyobozi w'imitima nawe gendana niwe. urwego nagezeho indahangarwa namenye ko Yezu akiza kuva kera nkiri muto nari ntarabona ukuri kuby'Imana none ubu nzi kw'Imana idushakira ibyiza tutabasha kwibonera none ubu nzi kw'Imana idushakira ibyiza tutabasha kwibonera. Le pardon, la preuve de l'amour. Le pardon, cette force divine qui nous rend capables, clairvoyants. Il nous rend plus libres, plus heureux. Il devient le chemin vers la paix. Pardonner n'est pas oublier notre histoire. Pardonner, c'est dépasser notre nature. C'est aimer l'être humain tel qu'il est, en sachant qu'il est fait de péché. Vive, vive le pardon dans nos cœurs et dans notre pays, en Afrique et dans le monde entier. Vive, vive, vive le pardon. Le pardon n'est pas contre la vérité. Au contraire, il l'exige même. Quand l'amour épouse la justice, c'est la paix qui naît de cette union. Et la réconciliation est possible. Pardonner n'est pas oublier notre histoire. Pardonner, c'est dépasser notre nature. C'est aimer l'être humain tel qu'il est, en sachant qu'il est fait de péchés. Vive le pardon, dans nos cœurs, dans notre pays, en Afrique et dans le monde entier. Vive le pardon. Le pardon, remède de Dieu pour la paix dans nos cœurs et dans nos maisons. Que la terre embrasse son parfum qui vient du Dieu vivant, le parfum qui pacifie le monde. Pardonnez, mais pas oublier notre histoire. Pardonnez, c'est dépasser notre passé, c'est aimer l'être humain tel qu'il est, en sachant qu'il est fait de péché. Vive le pardon, dans nos cœurs, dans notre pays, en Afrique et dans le monde entier. Vive le pardon. Pardonner n'est pas oublier notre histoire. Pardonner, c'est dépasser notre passé, c'est aimer l'être humain tel qu'il est, en sachant qu'il est fait de péchés. Vive le pardon, dans nos cœurs, dans notre pays, en Afrique et dans le monde entier. Vive le pardon. Nyina wa jambo uri izuba ryarasiye mu Rwanda ikibeho rikaboneshereza isi yose kugira ngo igire amahoro. Nyina wa jambo uri izuba ryarasiye mu Rwanda ikibeho isi yose kugira ngo igire amahoro. dukora mu isi Imana igenda irudufashamo kugeza ubwo yatwihereye Yezu ngo atubere icyitegererezo ngo atubere jambo rya rurema ni nawe jambo kuri izuba ryarasiye mu Rwanda ikibeho rikaboneshereza isi yose kugira ngo igire amahoro ni nawe jambo kuri izuba ryarasiye mu Rwanda ikibeho rikaboneshereza isi yose kugira ngo igire amahoro izuba ryarasiye iwacu ikibeho ni naryo ryarasiye i Nazareti ibishashi by'urumuri ritanga nibikwire mu banyarwanda nibikwire muri Isirayeli ni nawe jambo kuri izuba ryarasiye mu Rwanda ikibeho rikaboneshereza isi yose kugira ngo igire amahoro ni nawe jambo kuri izuba ryarasiye mu Rwanda ikibeho rikaboneshereza isi yose kugira ngo igire amahoro mu Rwanda impamvu dukunda Imana nuko nayo yatwihitiyemo kugeza ubwo n'umubyeyi wa Yezu adusuye mu Rwagasabo adusuye muri Nyaruguru ni nawe jambo kuri izuba ryarasiye mu Rwanda ikibeho rikaboneshereza isi yose kugira ngo igire amahoro ni nawe jambo kuri izuba ryarasiye mu Rwanda ikibeho rikaboneshereza isi yose kugira ngo igire amahoro komeza utube hafi Mana rurema duhore hafi nawe Bikira Mariya tukuvuge mutoni mu bakobwa tukurate nyina wa jambo tukurate rembo rya rugira nyina wa jambo kuri izuba ryarasiye mu Rwanda ikibeho rikaboneshereza isi yose kugira ngo igire amahoro ni nawe jambo kuri izuba ryarasiye mu Rwanda ikibeho rikaboneshereza isi yose kugira ngo igire amahoro ni nawe jambo kuri izuba ryarasiye mu Rwanda ikibeho rikaboneshereza isi yose kugira ngo igire amahoro ni nawe jambo uri izuba kibeho bikaboneshereza isi yose kugira ngo igire amahoro.
Kizito mihigo twakunze tugikunda kandi tuzakunda ubuziraherezo. Sabira isi, sabira u Rwanda kandi usabira umuryango wawe wakureze. Sabira abato, sabira urungano kandi usabire n'abakuru. Twe nubwo dusirira usurukije ab'ijuru. Kizito mihigo twakunze tugikunda kandi tuzakunda ubuziraherezo. Sabira isi, sabira u Rwanda kandi usabira umuryango wawe wakureze. Sabira abato, sabira urungano kandi usabire n'abakuru. Mbega igitaramo gihire utaramanye n'iyo gutoye, utaramenya umubyeyi Mariya n'abamarayika n'abatagatifu. Kizito mihigo twakunze tugikunda kandi tuzakunda ubuziraherezo. Sabira isi, sabira u Rwanda kandi usabira umuryango wawe wakureze. Sabira urungano kandi usabire n'abakuru. Mbega ururabo ruhimbaje rwateguwe mu ijuru. Kizito wakoreye Imana yakwituye ibyiza.
Kizito Mihigo rero tuzagukunda iteka kuri radiyo Urumuri. Tuzagukunda iteka kuko impamvu irahari. Tuzagukunda iteka kuko duhanije indangagaciro, kubera ko duhanije ubutumwa dukurikira, kubera ko wadusigiye inyigisho. Iyo byose n'ibindi ntarondoye nibyo bizatuma tutakwibagirwa kuri radiyo Urumuri. Niyo mpamvu uturimbo twawe nk'ubu iyo tudutangije ibiganiro byanze bikunze aho uri birakunezeza, natwe kandi bikatunezeza n'abakunzi ba radiyo Urumuri bikabanezeza nk'uko bahora babitwandikira bari benshi. Turabareba, mwatugezeho, mwageze kuri radiyo Urumuri. Ikoranabuhanga rirabitwereka yuko abo muri bo aho muri byose turabibona. Ni byiza cyane rero turabyishimira kandi tubashimira no kuba mugumya gushyigikira radiyo yanyu, kuko radiyo Urumuri ni iyanyu, ni iya buri wese, ni iya buri munyarwanda. Ntabwo ari iya Louise Simpunga, si iya Celestine Sebahire diregiteri wayo, si iya abakora ibiganiro batandukanye. Muzi ko turi ikipe nini rwose. Twese ni iyacu. Natwe abakora ibiganiro ntabwo ari iyacu, ni iy'abanyarwanda twese. Niyo mpamvu buri wese ayifiteho uruhare kandi ayifitemo ijambo. Turabararika rwose buri munsi, buri gihe. Hari n'igihe dushyira n'ubu ngubu rwose ndagiye kubikora mu kanya, dushyira urufunguzo rubinjiza hano kugira ngo ababishaka muze hano tuganire, muvuge icyo mutekereza, muvuge uburyo mwumva mumeze, mubwire abandi banyarwanda ibyo mubona byateza u Rwanda imbere, ibyo mubona byateza abandi imbere, kuko indangagaciro za Kizito Mihigo zacu dusaba yuko dufatanya, nta kwishishanya, nta kureba undi ibi ngibi ibi n'ibi. Muzi ko igihugu cyacu cyangwa se twebwe abanyarwanda tujye twivugira twebwe abanyarwanda, kuko igihugu ni ikintu kidafatika. Twebwe abanyarwanda twagize ibihe byo gucibwamo ibice, turaryana, turicana, turahezanya, turahohoterana, n'ubu kandi biracyakomeje, birababaje. Ariko Kizito Mihigo we yigisha, atanga ubundi butumwa, radiyo Urumuri nayo igatanga ubundi butumwa. Niyo mpamvu rero tumwifashisha iyo dushaka gutambutsa zimwe muri izo ndangagaciro zo kugira ngo abanyarwanda tubane neza, dutekereze ku cyaduhuriza hamwe, kandi kigatuma twajya imbere hamwe, ntawe uheje undi, ntawe ureba undi ikijisho, twese nk'abanyarwanda. Turabashimiye rero kuba muri kumwe natwe. Ibiganiro by'uyu munsi turi kuwa kane tariki 15 Ukwakira 2020, muri kumwe na Aloyize Simpunga wabibateguriye kandi witeguye no kubibagezaho. Murakoze kubana nanjye, ntabwo muri bugicuze uyu mugoroba. Ndagira ngo mbanze ariko mbasaba imbabazi, kuko nashatse kugerageza, nari nanze kubibateguza kubera ko ntari nizeye ikoranabuhanga, cyane cyane kuko hari ibintu byinshi bitaba biturutse kuri radiyo Urumuri. Ariko uyu munsi hagombaga kuba habaye, nicyo tugiye guheraho tunaganira, habaye ikiganiro n'itangazamakuru cyakozwe n'umuryango wa Rusesabagina. Ni ikibaye cya kabiri rero, umuryango wa Rusesabagina ufatanije n'abavoka abunganira Paul Rusesabagina mu mategeko, umuryango we washyizeho, n'ubwo leta y'u Rwanda yo yabanze ikanabangira. Ni ikiganiro giteye amatsiko cyane, kuko ngewe nagikurikiye nubwo ibyuma byanze kugira ngo mbibereke mu gikurikire uko cyabaga. Ni ikiganiro giteye amatsiko kuko cyarimo byinshi cyane, rwose ndashaka kugira ngo ndebe nishobora kukibereka uyu munsi, ndakibereka kuko ngiye kugishaka kugira ngo ngitunganye. Muraza kunyihanganira nimuza kubona mpuze, mujye mumenya ko ndi kugerageza kugira ngo nkibereke ko giteye amatsiko cyane. Hagaragajwe ibintu byinshi bitavuzwe mu kiganiro cya mbere. Muzi ko ikiganiro cya mbere ntabwo twashoboye kukibereka imbonankubone, ariko n'icya kabiri twitegura kubikora. Tuza kugira akabazo kuko twari twanatangiye rwose. Ngira ngo abakurikiye, abantu mwakoze subscribe kuri radiyo Urumuri kuri YouTube nshya iyi ngiyi turi kuvugiraho, niba mwarakoze subscribe mwabonye ko yabahaye ubutumwa yuko radiyo Urumuri itangiye ibiganiro saa 11 ku isaha ya Buruseli n'i Kigali. Noneho hashize iminota nk'ine cyangwa 5 ibiganiro biracika. Ntabwo rero ari radiyo Urumuri yagize ikibazo. Murabizi ko hano tugerageza kwitwararika ikoranabuhanga rwose, kandi murabidushimira. Ni abari muri icyo kiganiro n'itangazamakuru bagize ikibazo ku murongo bariho, uracika, barahindura bajya ku wundi, dutsinda kumenya uwo wundi bahinduye bagiyeho. Turababaza, baradusubiza, noneho badusubije tumenya aho bagiye, tujya kubashaka. Uyu munsi twirukanka, twahumagiye twiruka ariko ku mbuga nkoranyambaga no kuri murandasi. Ariko rero twagezeyo, ibyo bintu byose ndetse n'ibibazo mwibaza, ibibazo mukunze kwibaza hano ku mbuga nkoranyambaga za radiyo Urumuri n'ahandi, twabibabarisha. icyo kiganiro twakinjiyemo rwose. Icyo kiganiro n'itangazamakuru tubaza ibibazo bikwiye, duhabwa ibisubizo bikwiye. Nk'itangazamakuru radiyo Urumuri nyine iba iri hose ahari amakuru areba abanyarwanda n'u Rwanda. Turaza kubiganiraho rero, turaza kubigarukaho uburyo iyo nama n'itangazamakuru yagenze. Ese hahindutse iki? Ese bimeze bite? Amakuru mashya ajyanye n'ifatwa no gushimutwa kwa Paul Rusesabagina ndetse no kumufunga n'imanza inyirwamanza bari kumukorera. Ese ibishyashya ni ibihe? Turabigarukaho kuko byavuzweho muri iyo nama n'itangazamakuru. Iyo ni ingingo ya mbere. Nituza kubona akanya biraterwa n'uko nyine ndi kugerageza kubatunganyiriza icyo kiganiro ngo nkibereke. Hashize nubwo hashize amasaha 2 cyangwa se isaha imwe kirangiye, isaha n'igice kirangiye, ndi bujye ngerageza ndebe ko nagitunganya nkakibereka. Ariko nibitadukundira turabagezaho, turaza kuganira no ku yindi ngingo nanone nayo ivugwa iriho, mwabibonye abakurikirana ku mbuga nkoranyambaga. Ubu ngubu ikoranabuhanga ryageze kuri buri wese, murabibona ko hasohotse n'ubundi ibindi bishyashya by'inyongera kuri anketi zari zarakozwe kera, ariko zikaba zongeye kongerwamo ibindi no gushyirwa ahagaragara ku bundi buryo. Izo anketi ni iperereza ryakozwe n'ibinyamakuru bibiri, ibinyamakuru mpuzamahanga bibiri. Hari ikinyamakuru rero cyitwa national cyangwa se sinzi ukuntu babivuga, ngira ngo cyanditse mu giportugais cyangwa icyesipanyol, national. N'ikindi kinyamakuru cyitwa Mediapart. Hari byakoze anketi byifatanije, bikora anketi mpuzamahanga ikomeye cyane. Ni ibinyamakuru bikunze gukora za anketi zikomeye cyane, ndetse zimwe zijya zivanaho abaperezida. Ibyo binyamakuru bikora anketi biza kongera kwerekana ibishya byongereye ku byo byari byaratangaje mbere, byongeraho ibindi bishya bigaragaza aho Perezida wa Repubulika Paul Kagame ahurira n'abaherwe b'abanyamahanga. Turaza kubigarukaho. Abo baherwe rero bakaba baragiye bamufasha, aribo bagiye bamufasha mu bikorwa byo kunyereza umutungo w'u Rwanda, ndetse bakanamufasha gukora iyozandonke ry'uwo mutungo, aho barijyana kurihisha mu mahanga. Ibyo binyamakuru rero byakoze bibiri byakoze iperereza. Ni ibinyamakuru bikunze gukora iperereza ku byerekeranye n'ibikorwa nk'ibyo ngibyo by'imitungo inyerezwa yibwa ku buryo mpuzamahanga. Ibyo binyamakuru rero byabonye izindi nzira, ibindi bishyashya nibyo byujuje ibindi byatangaje bishyashya kuri ubwo buryo. Turaza rero kubivugaho ibyo binyamakuru icyo byatangaje vuba aha ngaha, hashize iminsi 2. Turaza kubibanyuriramo tubiganireho mu kanya turangije iyo ngingo ya Paul Rusesabagina. Twizera ko turi bushobore kubagezaho uburyo iyo nama yagenze. Iyo nama nyine yahuje abavoka n'umuryango wa Paul Rusesabagina n'abanyamakuru, bakababaza ibibazo. Ngiyo gahunda twabateguriye, twizera ko muri buyigiremo uruhari. Ngiye gushyira umurongo wa Zoom idufasha kubonana amashusho, kugira ngo mwinjiremo, mwakwinjira namwe hano tuganire ku ngingo iyi cyangwa iriya, kuri izo ebyiri twashyize ku rutonde rw'ibyo turi buvugeho. Mu kanya kandi hagati y'ibyo biganiro, mugenzi wacu wateguye amakuru y'uyu munsi turaza kujya tuyabagezaho nyine hagati muri icyo biganiro, ndetse n'uturirimbo nk'utwari dutangiye twa Kizito Mihigo ndetse n'abandi, ndetse reka mpere ku karirimbo kubera ko tugiye kumuvugaho. Ndashaka kuvuga Paul Rusesabagina. Reka mpere ku karirimbo abacuranzi bamukunda kandi bamuzi bagiye gucuranga ibyo bamuziho. Reka nze mbereke ako karirimbo ku bareba amashusho yacu kuri YouTube channel yacu, ubwo mwebwe murakabona, abadukurikiye ku mirongo yindi ubwo namwe murakumvisha amajwi.
So my travels last summer took me to Rwanda for a few weeks. It's a wonderful place. It's a wonderful country. It's a beautiful place to be. The people that we met were so incredibly friendly and helpful. The music is wonderful. But of course they had a huge tragedy about 13 years ago. And while I was visiting the memorial to the genocide, I started writing this song as I was looking at the names of people who had done extraordinary things to help their neighbors. When a lot of people fell into madness, there were some people that did some extraordinary ways of hiding their neighbors in a shower for months, you know, these kind of just unbelievable things. And so I wrote this song, and it's called Paul Rusesabagina, who is the guy made famous in the film Hotel Rwanda, who saved a lot of people in the hotel. And so it's named for him, but it's actually about many others, and about Rwanda and the genocide itself. So that's how it goes. Skull and bone, bone and skull, killing until killing was dull. The signs, they were clear as the tear we now grieve, but we didn't want to see what we could not believe. And an uncommon ground, an island found amidst the walls of Milcoli. The hills, they cried, but here no one died in the arms of the genocide. Paul Rusesabagina, Paul Rusesabagina, Paul Rusesabagina, Paul Rusesabagina, Paul Rusesabagina, Paul Rusesabagina, Paul Rusesabagina. Well, in the streets, in the shadow of the city, in the churches, they raised the machete. They packed them in and threw away the key. The fear was near while they steered them clear, straight through the iron gate. Work will make you free. And if you swing the people who swing the machete, you'll have your work nearly done already. They had the doctors, lawyers, priests, and the mayor. And the spirit caught them up and down, and they ran the riffraff out of town. Straight through the iron gate. Work will make you free. Paul Rusesabagina, 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 Paul Rusesabagina. Say never again, 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 never again. Well, far asunder the world did fall. Never again. Never again. Till you could see a whisper, and that was all. Never again, never again. Crimes echoed in, chimes echoed out. Never again, never again. And the sense of finality left little doubt. Never again, never again. The stone that we once carried with courage, never again, never now again. Only an impossible way to discourage. Again, lo, the again. Mighty shall soon see their reckoning. Never again, never dare no again. Longer hope, dare no longer sing. Never again. They've come to eliminate the Jew. Never again, never again. Take away the Tutsi. Never again, never again. Get rid of the gay. Never again, never again. Take away the gypsies. Never again. All of the artists. Never again. All the Armenians. Never again, never again. Take away the teachers. Never again, never again. And anyone who will dare to question never again. The yin and the yang, the dark and the light, the weed and the weed, the evil and the right. Grind them up till they are dust and let them blow away like red, red rust. Say never again, never again, never again, never again. Say never again, never again, never again, never again. But what is the value of words with no weight? Do I sit and let others meet their fate? Never again, never again. Till they come for me and I find never again, never again. That I'm the last one in line. Praise Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Never again. Harriet Tubman. Schindler. Yahya Sul Kadu Himbe. Ferdowald Kadu Hije. Damascus Simba. And Paul Rusesabagina. 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 Never again. Paul Rusesabagina. Never again. Never again, Paul Rusesabagina. Never again, never again, Paul Rusesabagina. Never again, never again.
Sabira mata, sabira urungano kandi usabire n'abakuru. Intwari ntipfa, umuhanzi ntapfa, utuye mu mitima yacu, usanga ruri inganzo yacu. Kizito mihigo twakunze tugikunda kandi tuzakunda ubuziraherezo. Sabira isi, sabira urungano kandi usabira umuryango wawe wakureze. Sabira amata, sabira urungano kandi usabire n'abakuru. KMP ntipfa, Kizito Mihigo ntapfa, asinziriye mu mitima yabo yabereye urumuri. Kizito Mihigo twakunze tugikunda kandi tuzakunda ubuziraherezo. Sabira isi, sabira urungano kandi usabira umuryango wawe wakureze. Sabira amata, sabira urungano kandi usabire n'abakuru. Ugiye heza, usanze beza, natwe tukiri mu rugendo tuzagusanga heza. Mu mahoro adashira, twongere dutaramane, mu buzima budapfa, twongere dutaramane. reka tuvuge icyiza wavanye mu rupfu kimpera ukwizera kiyongera ukwemera nubwo twashegeshwe n'ibyago by'agahomamunwa nubwo rubanda badukwemye tuzatura mana nubwo amahanga yavuze ngo tuzi kwicara gusa twe tuzabereka ko turi n'abanyamabasi rero yesu uduherekeze uwo mushinga utanga amahoro uzatubera urumuri uzatubera umuhoza uzatubera inema ntagatifu yarumiriye ituze mu dore intego yanjye ya mbere n'urukundo isi yose umuri ututse zifashisha agahinda n'akababaro nagize abandi ibyishimo ariko sinzigera nkoresha ibyishimo nahawe ngo mbababaze nyagasani azabiduhamo ubuzima budashira nzaba igikoresho cy'amahoro y'Imana aho urwango rwashinze ibirindiro kire y'urukundo ahari ubugome n'akababaro kire y'imbabazi zawe aho amakosa n'ibinyoma byateye amatako nzajyana y'ukuri ahatura abantu bashidikanya nzahamya ukwemera ahaganje abantu bihegereza umuhamya w'ukwizera aho umwijima n'ibitabo byateye intebe zahatunga urumuri akababaro kanjye kazababyarira iseko ise kwitera urumbeza manasiga nshake guhozwa mbere yo guhoza manasiga nshake kumva mbere yo kumva abandi singashake gukundwa aho gukunda iyo ntaze niho numva yose agira amahoro iyo nibagiwe gatoya ndibuka byinshi byawe bikampa kubaho iyo mbabarira uwampemukiye nawe urambabarira nyagasani mbese umuntu aramutse adapfa yakugera watemana umutegereje mbese umuntu aramutse adapfa yakugera watemana umutegereje dutegereje umva nta muntu byica bitubera irembo rigana mu ijuru nuko tukazuka nuko tukazuka nuko tukazuka iyi si dutuyemo irimo amakuba irimo ingorane irimo inzitane nta muntu n'umwe wabaye hano ku isi ngo ahave atarababara na rimwe agahinda kanjye ni ukubona abantu bitwaza ko kababaro kugira ngo babwire abandi ko urukundo ruzima ngo rwo rutagishobotse nubwo nzi ko Yezu yapfuye nge nzi ko yanazutse kugira ngo twizere ko urupfu n'ibyago bitazigera bigira ijambo rya nyuma twizere ko urukundo rurusha byose imbaraga kwimbabaza ari ryo teme ry'abantu bagana ubuzima buhoraho kwimbabaza ari ryo teme ry'abantu bagana ubuzima buhoraho nuko tukazuka nuko tukazuka nuko tukazuka yaduhaze ikadupfira reka tukwibuke twibuka abacu reka tuvuge icyiza wavanye mu rupfu kwizera kiyongera ukwemera nubwo twashegeshwe n'ibyago by'agahomamunwa nubwo rubanda badukwiriye tuzatubura n'umwamahanga yavuze ngo tuzi kwicara gusa twe tuzabereka ko turi n'abanyamabasi inorero Yesu uduherekeze uwo mushinga utanga amahoro uzatubera urumuri uzatubera umuhoza uzatubera inema ntagatifu yarumwiyunge ituze n'ubumwe dore intego yanjye ya mbere ukubera isi yose umuryo utubutse zifashisha agahinda n'akababaro nahise abandi ibyishimo ariko sinzigera nkoresha ibyishimo nahawe ngo mbababaze nyagasana zabiduhamo ubuzima budashira nzaba igikoresho cy'amahoro y'Imana aho urwango rwashinze ibirindiro kire y'urukundo ahari ubugome n'akababaro kire y'imbabazi zawe aho amakosa n'ibinyoma byateye amatako nzajyana y'ukuri ahatura abantu bashidikanya nzahamya kwera ahaganje abantu bihegenza umuhamya w'ukwizera aho umwijima n'ibibi byawo byateye intebe nzahatura urumuri akababaro kanjye kazababyarira iseko ise twitere urumeza marasi bashake guhozwa mbere yo guhoza marasi bashake kumva mbere yo kumva abandi singashake gukundwa aho gukunda iyo ntaze niho numva yose agira amahoro iyo niyibagiwe gatoya nibuka byinshi byawe bikampa kubaho iyo mbabarira uwampemukiye nawe urambabarira nyagasani mbese mu ntaramutsa adapfa yakugera abatemana umutegereje mbese mu ntaramutsa adapfa yakugera abatemana umutegereje nta muntu byica bitubera irembo inama w'ijuru nuko tukazuka nuko tukazuka nuko tukazuka kibasha imitima y'abanyarwanda bereke ku buzima butivuganywa n'urupfu bereke ku rwango rutakibasha imitima y'abanyarwanda mbese muntu utinyuka ugafata umupanga ugatema mugenzi wawe mbese
mbese muntu utinyuka ugafata gerenade ukajugunya mu bantu, mbese ubwo uyobewe ko itegeko ry'Imana ari iryo gukunda mugenzi wawe nk'uko wikunda. Nakubwo ndabizi uzi ko ari inzozi zitajya mu ngiro, nakubwo ndabizi uraharanira ishema n'amafaranga. Mbese Banyarwanda ni ryari tuzumva ku itegeko ry'Imana ari ubuvandimwe? Mbese Banyarwanda ni ryari tuzumva ku itegeko ry'Imana rigomba kuba ingiro? Mbese Banyarwanda ni ryari tuzumva ku itegeko ry'Imana riruta ibintu n'amafaranga? Zaririmbira uwo mwami wavuze urukundo ruruta byose, zamurata mu mahanga kuko ubuzima bwawe bwamugize ubukombe bwawe. Zamure inuma, zamure ubuhamya bwiza ku isi yose. Igihe kirageze ngo twerekane Abanyarwanda bamenye Imana, ibikabe mu marangamutima ngo gihera no mu rugo no mu gutwarwa. Nitumara kumva iyi ndirimbo tumenye ko ikigenzi ari ugukunda. Yesu, 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 Yesu niwe kuri, niwe kuri. Yesu, 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 Yesu niwe nzira, niwe nzira. Yesu, 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 Yesu niwe bugingo. Yesu, 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 Yesu niwe kuri. Yesu, 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 Yesu niwe nzira, niwe nzira. Yesu, 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 Yesu niwe bugingo.
Nibyo rero kuko uwaducunguye Yesu nyine yarabitwibwiriye ko ari we nzira, akaba ari ukuri, akaba ari ubugingo. Niyo mpamvu dukomeza kumwizera tushyizeho umutima wacu wose, kubera izo mpamvu, kubera uwo ari we. Ntabwo rero ngiye kwigisha ntabwo ngiye kwigisha hano, singiye kubwiriza, ariko ndagira ngo mbabwire ko mbafitiye inkuru nziza. Mbaboneye inkuru nziza nuko ubu ngubu ndi kubabwira imashini ziri gukora, ziri gutunganya videwo y'ikiganiro umuryango we ndetse n'abahagarariye Paul Rusesabagina, umuryango wa Paul Rusesabagina n'abamuhagarariye mu mategeko, nubwo Kigali yabanze. Ariko uyu munsi nyine twabwiraga yuko bakoze inama n'itangazamakuru, bakaritangariza ibishyashya muri ibyo bibazo bya Paul Rusesabagina. Ikindi kandi abanyamakuru twaba twanababajije, reka nishyiremo kuko nayo nari mpari, twaba twababajije nyine ibishya n'ibyo bateganya. Inkuru nziza rero ni uko maze kuvugana abateguye icyo kiganiro, bakaba bamaze kunyoherereza iyo videwo, kuko igihe ntashoboye kuyifata kubera ibibazo bya tekinike nababwiye. Sinashoboye kuyifata, kimwe n'uko ntashoboye kuyibereka, kubereka iyo nama n'itangazamakuru imbona nkubone. ariko barayinyohereje banyohereje video y'iyo nama uko yakabaye. Nkaba rero ubu ngubu imashini zanjye zirimo kuyitegura, ziri kuyitunganya, ngiye kuyibereka uko yakabaye muyibone nk'aho mwari muhibereye. Ntacyo mwahombye cyane n'ubutayiberetse iri kuba, ariko hashize isaha amasaha abiri rwose iyo nama n'itangazamakuru irangiye. Murumva rero ko ntacyo mwahombye cyane, n'abayibonye iri kuba babarushije, babatanzeho amasaha abiri. Ariko radiyo Urumuri yo ibikora ibishoboka byose kugira ngo mubonere amakuru igihe, mubonere amakuru muyabone kandi avuye ku isoko, atanyuze mu zindi ntoki z'abandi bantu, kugira ngo muzamugira ibyo mubwirwa biba byashyizwemo amarangamutima y'abandi, cyangwa se ubundi buryo bwose ayo makuru aba yavuye mu murongo wayo. Mu kanya gato rero reka ndebe iyi mashini ko zarangije, niziba zarangije ndahera ko rwose mbagezaho icyo kiganiro uko cyakabaye, kugira ngo mumenye nyine ibishyashya muri ibyo izo nzira zose ibibazo bya Paul Rusesabagina biri kunyuramo. Mwihangane rero ndebe ko imashini zarangije, hanyuma tushyireho icyo kiganiro uko cyabaye.
Sinibana na rwa nari natewe n'amanjwe y'iyi si wowe ubwawe waraje urabihanagura kugira ngo nkunde ndokoke nk'urupfu rwa roho none umugambi wanjye mana ni amahoro ukwamamaza ku isi hose akira urwara mana ihoraho akira imitima yuzuye intimba akirize imfubyi n'abapfakazi akira abahemu n'abahemukishijwe ubahinduremo abatagatifu akira imitima yuzuye urwango rw'ibigomeke uyihundagazemo uyisenzekazemo umudahemuka twese utwiyegereze udutagatifuze tukubera abana kandi twemere utubere isoko y'urukundo isi yacu yuzuye imico inyuranye n'imigenzo ikwiye kuzuzanya aho kuba intandaro y'amatiku n'inzangano zitagira shinge kugeza aho umuntu ategura undi ngo nuko atanganya amazuru
Urumuri nagira ngo mbabwire yuko video y'inama yahuje abanyamategeko bagombye kuba baburanira Paul Rusesabagina ariko leta y'u Rwanda ikaba yarabangiye muraza kubyumvira ibyo babivugaho muri video tugiye kubereka y'inama nyine imaze iminota mikeya yirangiye. Iyo nama tukaba twayigiyemo nka radiyo Urumuri kandi tukaba twababarije ibibazo byose mwagiye mutugezaho bijyanye n'icyo kibazo. Ndagira ngo muze kubyumvira. Twabasabye rero ko nyuma y'uko tutashoboye gutambutsa icyo kiganiro live, twabasabye yuko batwoherereza video, none bamaze kuyitwoherereza. Ubu ngubu tugiye kuyibereka murebe namwe ayo magambo yahavugiwe, ibibazo byabajijwe nk'aho mwari muhibereye.
At Loyola University, Chicago. I've worked with Paul Rusesabagina and his foundation for over 15 years now, and have now spent nearly the last 2 months working with his family and the team to free Paul from his confinement in Rwanda. A brief recap before we go to the lawyers today. After being kidnapped in Dubai, Paul has now been under illegal arrest in Rwanda for 53 days. Sadly, his family still has limited and heavily monitored communication with Paul. In addition, his team of lawyers are just beginning to get access to Paul, which under international law should have happened on day one of his arrest. Several members of Paul's legal team are here with us today to talk about the situation and provide updates on what has been happening on the legal front over the last 10 days. I'd like to begin by introducing Peter Robinson, one of Paul's American lawyers, who is acting as the lead lawyer on our legal team to discuss the case and put this into context. Peter?
Thank you, Brian. I'm Peter Robinson. I'm a former assistant United States attorney and have been defending accused persons at international criminal courts and tribunals for the past 20 years, including at the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda. I'm serving as lead counsel for the team of lawyers retained by the family of Paul Rusesabagina to defend him following his illegal transfer to Rwanda. Our team includes lawyers from Rwanda, Belgium, Australia, Canada, and the United States. As you know, Paul Rusesabagina was taken to Rwanda against his will on August 29th in violation of international law. Instead of presenting a request for extradition or deportation to the United States or Belgium, the Rwandan government took Paul Rusesabagina to Rwanda by extrajudicial rendition. Once they arrested Paul in Kigali, the Rwandan government kept him tied, bound, and blindfolded for 3 days before parading him to the news media. Then they provided him with their own defense lawyers. Those of us real lawyers who have been tasked by the family to defend Paul Rusesabagina have watched in agony as his fake lawyers appeared with Paul in court. They failed to challenge his illegal rendition to Rwanda, and they made perfunctory arguments for his provisional release without mentioning his vulnerability to COVID-19, a circumstance that has resulted in the release of thousands of prisoners worldwide during this pandemic. Paul is 66 years old and has heart disease and hypertension. It has now been more than 50 days since Paul was arrested in Rwanda, and the government continues to block our team from defending Paul Rusesabagina. When we have sought access to Paul, the Rwandan government has consistently refused on the ground that Paul has never requested to be represented by the lawyers chosen by his family. This is not the case. Paul has told his family, including his daughter Anais, that he has requested to be defended by the team of lawyers led in Rwanda by Gatera Gashambana, Vincent Lercan, and Philippe Larochelle. Gatera Gashambana is the former president of the Rwandan Bar Association. He has defended the last two of President Paul Kagame's political opponents who were imprisoned, Victoire Ingabire and Diane Rwigara. He has the courage and the experience to fight for his clients, even in the courts of Rwanda. Vincent Lercan is a lawyer from Belgium who has been representing Paul Rusesabagina on the very same charges that the Rwandans asked the Belgian authorities to investigate. He has a wealth of experience in international human rights and won acquittals for 2 Rwandans, a former governor, Emmanuel Bagambiki, and the former police commander, Augustin Ndindiamana, at the United Nations Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda. Philippe Larochelle is a lawyer from Canada who has also defended clients at the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda and won the acquittal of Jacques Mungawariri, a Rwandan man prosecuted in Canada for alleged crimes during the Rwandan genocide. He is currently in Arusha, Tanzania, where he's about to start a trial defending a Rwandan charged with obstruction of justice. We don't understand why the Rwandan government is burdening its taxpayers with paying the legal fees of these government-sponsored lawyers when Mr. Rusesabagina has lawyers ready, willing, and able to defend him at his own expense. The only explanation for this is that they want to control all aspects of the proceedings, the judge, the prosecutor, and even the defense counsel. We are asking the United States, Belgium, and the European Union not to stand by while fundamental rights of its citizens and residents are being violated. Rwanda must respect international law by returning Paul Rusesabagina to the United States or Belgium. Thereafter, it's free to make a proper request for his transfer to Rwanda via extradition or deportation, or to have him prosecuted in Belgium. By illegally transferring him to Rwanda and continuing to deny him his right to counsel of his choice, the Rwandan authorities have shown that they cannot be trusted to provide a fair trial for Paul Rusesabagina. I will now turn this over to Vincent, Philippe, and Anaïs to tell you firsthand the efforts that have been made to provide Paul with legal representation and the obstacles that they have faced. Anaïs? Or perhaps we can go to Vincent first. I see you've joined us, Vincent.
Vincent, if you could please give us an update on what's happened starting with your trip to Kigali, and Philippe will be translating for Vincent.
Philippe, if you can ask Monsieur Lurquin.
Yes, Vincent. Donc, comme on faisait à l'époque, donc des phrases pas trop longues pour que je puisse traduire intégralement, on va dire.
Et voilà, la question est de savoir pourquoi est-ce que l'État rwandais ne veut pas que l'avocat puisse voir son client. Et donc la question qui se pose, c'est de savoir de quoi ils ont peur.
The issue is to find out why Rwanda does not allow Paul to meet with the lawyer of his choice.
De quoi ont-ils peur?
What are they afraid of?
Je vais vous raconter en quelques mots notre voyage, et Philippe a participé en grande partie à celui-ci, pour essayer de vous démontrer que le seul élément qui manque encore dans ce dossier, c'est la parole de Paul Rusesabagina.
I will tell you what happened when I was in Kigali, and I was myself present during some of Vincent's stay in Kigali, to try to understand why Paul is denied a safety in this.
Donc, quand on est arrivé à l'aéroport, déjà on a eu 1h30 d'interrogation, parce que visiblement être avocat est un gros mot au Rwanda.
If we
Ça ne passe plus.
Philippe, we may need to ask you to turn off your camera, please. Just say bandwidth.
We were interrogated for an hour and a half because being a lawyer is already a problem. Yep.
If you could briefly restate that, we lost you for a moment.
Il y a des problèmes, moi je n'entends plus.
Moi j'entends.
Voilà, on peut continuer, parce que moi j'entendais plus, moi je suis...
Already when you arrived. So Vincent was interrogated for an hour and a half when he arrived in Rwanda. Apparently, being a lawyer seems to be a problem over there.
Quand on arrive à la douane, on vous demande quel est votre nom, quelle est votre profession. Et quand on a dit que l'on était avocat de Paul Rusesabagina, directement, on vous a repoussé hors de la file et on a attendu 1h30 avant quand même de vous laisser passer.
So when I arrived at the custom, I stated my name and my profession. I said I was a lawyer. And that was sufficient to have me kicked out of the lineup and put aside for an hour and a half for examination.
Ça, évidemment, c'est pas grave, mais l'ensemble du climat de la semaine qu'on va passer au Rwanda est un peu ce climat de suspicion sur le fait de dire Rusesabagina, c'est un nom dont on ne doit pas parler au Rwanda.
So being put aside for an hour and a half doesn't matter in itself, but what I learned from this is that it seems that Rusesabagina is a name that cannot be said in Rwanda.
Moi, je suis un avocat belge.
I'm a
Et j'allais le
Belgian
voir
lawyer.
dans le cadre d'une procédure belge.
And I already represent him in Belgium. So I was going to see him in Rwanda within the framework of my case in Belgium,
avec un juge d'instruction belge.
Where I already represent Rusesabagina. There is
avec un juge d'instruction belge et un procureur belge.
So there is a judge in Belgium, there is a prosecutor in Belgium.
Pourquoi est-ce que l'avocat belge de l'accusé, qui est belge aussi, puisque M. Rusesabagina a la nationalité belge,
why is a Belgian lawyer of a Belgian citizen, because Mr. Rusesabagina is a Belgian citizen,
ne pourrait pas voir son avocat?
Why is Mr. Rusesabagina prohibited from seeing his lawyer, Maître Lurquin?
D'autant plus que la procédure en Belgique a été demandée par les autorités judiciaires rwandaises.
And it's worth outlining that the procedure in Belgium was started at the request of the Rwandan authorities.
Ça fait près de 2 ans qu'on essaye, qu'on interroge M. Rusesabagina en Belgique et que je l'assiste pour essayer de prouver qu'il est coupable de quelque chose.
It's for 2 years now, the Belgian authorities have been examining Mr. Rusesabagina to try to demonstrate that he did something wrong. And I have been assisting him throughout this process.
La dernière audition qu'on a eue devant les enquêteurs belges participait également le procureur général de Kigali et son adjoint.
During the last of these hearings, the Attorney General of Rwanda and his
prosecutor
joint were present during the examination of Mr. Prosecutor. The prosecutor of, there was a prosecutor from Kigali.
Et ensemble avec la justice belge, ils interrogeaient M. Rusesabagina.
And together, Anaïs, can you?
And together with the Belgian authorities, they were examining Mr. Rusesabagina.
Et à ce moment-là, et c'est la dernière fois que je l'avais vu ici en Belgique, M. Rusesabagina a dit « Je ne répondrai pas à vos questions au procureur rwandais parce que ces gens-là, a-t-il dit, ils veulent me tuer. »
During the last of these examinations, which is the last occasion where Mr. Lurquin had the chance to see Rusesabagina, the prosecutor from Rwanda was trying to ask questions to Mr. Rusesabagina. Mr. Rusesabagina answered them, "I will not answer your questions because I know you want to kill me."
Heureusement, il n'est pas mort, mais ils l'ont quand même enlevé.
So thank God he's not dead, but he was nevertheless abducted.
Donc, on assiste à un procès qui est un procès uniquement belge. Et la seule chose que l'on doit avoir pour voir M. Rusesabagina, c'est une attestation du bâtonnier du Rwanda, Ouganda, pour me permettre d'aller le voir à la prison.
This is, we will not say enough that this is a Belgian procedure. And this is in the context of that Belgian procedure that Mr. Lurquin, Maître Lurquin was trying to see Mr. Rusesabagina in Rwanda. And apparently the only thing that is necessary is an authorization from the head of the Kigali Bar Association, Mr. Kavuraganda.
C'est une des choses les plus inacceptables, tant pour Philippe que pour moi, qui est le fait que celui qui a refusé de nous permettre d'aller voir Paul Rusesabagina, c'est un de nos confrères, le bâtonnier de Kigali.
It is totally unacceptable that the person who is blocking attempts by Maître Lurquin and myself to see Mr. Rusesabagina, is actually a lawyer from the bar of Belgium, of Brussels, in Belgium.
Nous avons attendu pendant 6 jours.
We waited for 6 days.
Mais entre-temps, il y a quand même des choses positives qui se sont passées.
Despite this long period of waiting, positive things nevertheless happened.
La première chose, c'est que le juge d'instruction belge m'a permis d'avoir la copie du dossier de M. Rusesabagina, alors que vous savez qu'en Belgique, l'instruction est secrète. Nous avons obtenu la copie de son dossier.
The first positive thing that happened is that the judge d'instruction in Belgium allowed Maître Lurquin to have access to the case file, despite the fact that normally these case files in Belgium are completely confidential.
La seconde chose positive, c'est que nous avons obtenu la copie du dossier rwandais de M. Rusesabagina qui est en train d'arriver normalement ici en Belgique.
The second positive outcome is that we managed to secure the Rwandan file of Mr. Rusesabagina, and we are hoping to get it soon here in Belgium.
Et la troisième chose, c'est que le bâtonnier Gatera est allé à la prison, a vu M. Rusesabagina, et M. Rusesabagina a écrit une lettre authentifiée, comme quoi le bâtonnier Gatera et moi-même étions ses conseils.
The third positive outcome is that Mr. Gatera, who has been a bâtonnier of the Kigali Bar Association in the past, has managed to meet with Mr. Rusesabagina, and he has obtained a stamped letter certifying that Maître Gatera and Maître Lurquin are Mr. Rusesabagina's appointed counsels.
Un des éléments quand même essentiels de la défense, c'est le choix du conseil par l'accusé, ce que Rusesabagina n'a jamais eu.
So one of the most important components of a full defense is to be able and to be at liberty to appoint the counsel of one's choice. And Mr. Rusesabagina has been denied that right for too long a time.
Alors, je vous avoue que je suis assez étonné de la position du bâtonnier Kavaruganda de Kigali, parce que lui, sa solution, c'était la fuite. Il a disparu.
The attitude of Kavaruganda is actually very surprising because he has effectively disappeared since Maître Lurquin has been trying to get a hold of him to obtain the necessary authorization to be able to visit Mr. Rusesabagina.
Je crois que c'est un élément important aussi avec Maître La Rochelle. On a pu montrer qu'on n'avait pas peur des autorités du Rwanda.
It's actually an important part of it is that we were able to show that we do not fear the Rwandan authorities.
Aujourd'hui, j'ai demandé aux autorités belges de faire en sorte que la commission rogatoire qui devrait partir de Belgique, l'on puisse en faire partie.
Today, I have asked the Belgian authorities to be a member or to be included in the rogatory commission that is ordered by the Belgian authorities.
Il n'est pas possible dans le débat judiciaire que vous n'ayez qu'un juge, un procureur du Rwanda et que l'avocat soit exclu de ce débat judiciaire. Et donc, je crois effectivement que dans une quinzaine de jours, on va pouvoir retourner au Rwanda, mais là pour revoir Paul Rusesabagina.
So it would be unacceptable that a rogatory commission within the framework of the Belgian procedure takes place only in presence of the judge, the prosecutor, the Belgian prosecutor, the Rwandan prosecutor, without Mr. Rusesabagina having the chance to be assisted by the lawyer of his choice.
Et donc, je pense que effectivement, d'ici 15 jours, 3 semaines, on pourra retourner au Rwanda avec la commission rogatoire et là, on verra Paul Rusesabagina.
So normally, that rogatory commission is set to leave in 2 weeks, and I should be a part of it, which would allow me to see Mr. Rusesabagina.
Voilà, ma première intervention maintenant. Je vous écoute.
That's it. I'm now listening to you.
Thank you very much, Monsieur Laquan. Philippe, if we can ask you to give a little bit of an update too, since you were also in Kigali, and let us know the issues that you ran into in Kigali.
Just to complete a little bit the picture that Vincent has described, I myself got to Kigali a week or 10 days before Vincent arrived in Kigali. I was going there as part of this trial here in Arusha that Peter has mentioned earlier, but I was also going there, and I made it clear when I arrived at the airport that I was going to Rwanda to meet with Mr. Rusesabagina. So the reaction of the custom officer was to, exactly like what happened to Vincent, to to ask me to leave the line and to wait for people, because people would like to speak to me, not mentioning what they wanted to discuss. So I had to wait for an hour and a half. Somebody came and asked me a few questions about who was the client and what I wanted to do.
Philippe, unfortunately, we're losing your audio.
Brian, why don't you introduce Anais, and we will come back to Philippe if his microphone comes back on.
Great, thank you. I'd like to ask Anais Kanimba.
Was finally allowed through. I also had for my mission to enter Rwanda. So immediately after I entered Rwanda, I'm sorry. Am I back online?
You cut out several times, Philippe. Why don't we try it one more time? And if not, we'll go to Anais. If you can just briefly go from the beginning, we lost much of what you said.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
We can.
Oui.
So I'll try to be brief. I encountered the same difficulties as Vincent in trying to meet with Paul. I encountered the same difficulties with the bâtonnier. I even managed to obtain a letter from my bâtonnier at their request to ask the bâtonnier to allow me to meet with Mr. Rusesabagina. But just like Vincent, the bâtonnier was nowhere to be found, and I was never able to actually be able to meet with Mr. Rusesabagina during my stay in Rwanda. And I have another client that I was supposed to meet, for whom I have a standing authorization to meet with him in the prison where he's detained. And although in the past I was always able to meet with him without any difficulties, this time around, when we arrived at the prison to meet with him, we were told that the executive secretary of the bar has actually withdrawn my authorization, and I was left before the prison gate, not being allowed to meet with that person at all. So I don't know if it is because of Rusesabagina's case, but I can see that there is a certain deterioration in allowing people in Rwanda to be able to meet with their lawyer of choice. This man I was supposed to meet has a case in Canada. The reason why I wanted to meet him, just like Vincent, had nothing to do with the case in Rwanda, but I was nevertheless completely blocked from having access to my client over there. So it's really painful to see that. The possibility for one accused to see a lawyer of his choice should not be impeded in any manner whatsoever by the authorities of the country where he's detained.
Thank you very much, Philippe. We'll now turn to Anais Kanimba, one of Paul's daughters, to give us a little bit of an update just on what's been happening since the beginning, to put everything into context, and how the family has been feeling through the entire process. Anais, could you talk a little bit maybe about the legal process from the beginning and just update us from the family's perspective?
Thank you, Brian. Yeah, so as you heard, we've really struggled to get access to Dad, and also for Dad to have access to his lawyers. And then, as today we hear that the government has imposed some lawyers on him, one of them called Mr. Rugaza. Our family actually had tried several times to get access to that before Mr. Rugaza did a press conference on September 6th. So if you all remember, my father was taken to custody on August 31st. That day is still a nightmare for us. Since then, you know, that same week, we tried to call Rib several times to get access to Dad. We also had our lawyer, Gatera Gashabana, who's in Kigali, who tried to go see Dad on Thursday and Friday of that very first week. So we tried countless times to see Dad and to talk to him that first week, but we were denied access. And then, to our surprise, on Saturday, September 5th, we saw a press conference in which a man called Mr. Rugaza was my father's lawyer. Of course, we did not accept that because we had not spoken to him. We had, as you've seen, Peter Robinson, Vincent Lurquin, Philippe Larochelle, and others ready to go and defend Dad and ready to go and bring him home. But we weren't able to do so because since the very first day that arrived in Kigali, since the very first day we've known that he's been in custody, we've had zero access to him from a legal perspective, which has made it very difficult for us to even speak to him on a personal level and have in conversations with him that we can feel that he's speaking freely. Most of our conversations with him, we believe, has always been with people in the background because our father, you know, wasn't speaking his mind the way he could speak his mind in the past. So that's why we are really, really trying hard from our perspective to have him see the lawyer so we can finally speak to him. We can finally speak to Dad freely. Until today, we have not been able to do so.
Thank you very much, Anais. If we can go back to Peter Robinson for a moment, if you might just be able to wrap things up for us, Peter, before we go to Q&A.
Thanks, Brian. And I want to thank from the bottom of my heart, Vincent and Philippe, for having the courage to go to Rwanda and taking all that time to try to provide a competent defense to Paul Rusesabagina. I think that's the kind of lawyering that makes all of us in the profession very proud to be serving our clients and seeing how our colleagues can, at their own personal sacrifice, go beyond the call of duty to defend their clients. We hope that someday we'll be in a courtroom with Paul Rusesabagina and he can have the semblance of a defense team. But as things stand right now, as you've heard all of the efforts that the family, Vincent and Philippe and Gatera have made, we still stand here as outsiders watching a show trial which seems to be unfolding in a very unpleasant way. And so we hope that all of those of you listening will help us in trying to ensure that Paul has the lawyers of his choice and that he can be properly defended. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Oh, I'm sorry, Kim.
Thank you very much. We're now going to open to any questions from the media. If you look on the bottom of your Zoom screen, there is a section entitled Q&A. Please type any questions in there. I think that our presentation today has shown that despite the fact that many well-meaning people and groups have called for a free and fair trial for Paul Rusesabagina, I think everything that we've shown and told you today demonstrates that the likelihood of there being any kind of fair trial is 0 to none. We have our first question that I would like to ask, and the first question is there any news from the Belgian government?
Bon micro, Vincent.
Maybe Karine and Vincent, you can answer that together and emphasize each other's answers. Karine, why don't you start and you can add Monsieur Lurquin.
I think Monsieur Lurquin should start and I'll add to his point.
Non, je vous en prie. Mais donc au niveau du gouvernement belge, honnêtement, ça fait quand même quelques années qu'on circule un peu partout dans le monde. Ici, visiblement, il y a quand même n'appui en tout cas des ambassades de Belgique. Je crois vraiment que
there is support. There is what we can see now is that there is some support from the Belgian embassies.
Je crois que les autorités rwandaises ont franchi une ligne rouge qui n'est pas acceptable en Belgique.
I believe that the Rwandan authorities have crossed a line, across a red line that is completely unacceptable to the Belgian authorities.
Alors, pour le moment, les autorités judiciaires ont décidé de faire une commission rogatoire, ce qui est quelque chose d'extrêmement positif, parce que si ils ne le faisaient pas, ça laissait aux Rwandais le fait de faire eux seuls le procès.
So, for now, the Belgian authorities have decided to appoint a rogatory commission, which is very positive because not having done so would have sent the signal that the Rwandans were left on their own to do the trial.
Mais il faut qu'ils acceptent que les avocats puissent participer à cette commission. S'ils n'acceptent pas, il y a des questions parlementaires qui seront posées la semaine prochaine au Parlement.
But the Rwandans have to accept that the lawyers be part of the rogatory commission. Otherwise, questions will be asked in the parliament.
Donc, il faut que les autorités belges, pour le moment, ça fonctionne plus ou moins. Il faut aller au niveau de l'Europe, ça me semble important. Et ce qui est important, c'est ce que vous faites aussi au niveau des États-Unis. Il est clair que la pression qui se fait par rapport à M. Rusesabagina est positive et est nécessaire pour faire pression sur le gouvernement belge.
So some pressure must be exerted on the Belgian government because we don't think it is doing enough right now. So pressure can be exercised at the level of Europe. Pressure can be exercised at the level of the US. Everywhere where, because Paul is also has a green card from the United States of America. So everywhere where we can add pressure to allow him to, and we're just at the stage of have him being allowed to meet with the counsels of his choice. We are not yet into the issues that may arise during the trial. I'm adding that. Vincent did not say that, but I think it's worth outlining.
Thank you, Philippe and Vincent. Merci beaucoup. I will also add that, of course, we have been applying pressure at every level in the United States, in Belgium, and in the EU. We have been communicating with the United States State Department, with the United States Congress, with different countries' missions to the United Nations. There is more of a United Nations process that I will let one of the lawyers address. Additionally, we have reached out to and been talking with the Belgian ambassador in the United States, with the Belgian Foreign Ministry. We've communicated we have attempted to communicate directly to the new Belgian Prime Minister. And we've got some other specific questions about that. But right now, I'm going to go back to the questions from the reporters in the order that they have come in. From Morgan Windsor at ABC International. Morgan, I'm combining a couple of your questions. She wanted to know, has anyone been able to physically see and speak with Paul in person since he was illegally detained? And is there any idea as to what the condition Paul is in and what conditions in which he are being held? Corinne and Lise, I'm going to direct those questions to you to start off with, please.
So there were a couple consular visits from the Belgian embassy in Rwanda. They went to see him when he was still, before he was moved to the current prison that he is in, and they actually saw him right before he was transferred. So and this was on, I believe, September 16 or 17. So for about a month since he's been to the new place, to the new prison, he has not been, no one from the Belgian embassy has been able to go visit him. As a matter of fact, they're still waiting for an approval from the Rwandan government to go and visit him.
Thank you. I'm going to, I'm just looking at the questions and seeing if we can combine a couple of them to get, that are asking essentially the same thing. One of the next questions is, have we reached out to the United States government? And yes, we have. Anais, if you could talk a little bit about the fact that we've had cooperation both from several congressional offices and the State Department.
Yes, so we've been working hard here in Washington, D.C., trying to get more people to support our cause and our struggle to release Dad. And that State Department, they've been very cooperative and they've been following our case very closely. We've also been working with several Congress representative and senator's office and trying to put together briefings for staffers to inform them of what's happening, in the hopes that actions can be taken in the near future.
The next question, I think that this needs to go to both Monsieur Larcan and Philippe, if you can help me translate. Are we viewing the Belgians' decision to share the confidential documents as a sign of their support for Mr. Rusesabagina? And then Peter, second question, are we getting any legal support from US authorities?
Vincent, tu comprends la question? Donc, la question, c'est de savoir si, selon ton expérience d'avocat en Belgique, est-ce que le fait que le juge ait accepté de partager le dossier est un signe du fait qu'il supporte M. Rusesabagina?
Qui supporte, ça c'est peut-être un grand mot, mais en tout cas qu'il pense que la procédure n'est pas tout à fait normale par rapport à son arrestation, ça c'est évident. Je crois que les juges en Belgique ont cette interrogation du fait de savoir s'ils ne sont pas, et c'est rare pour un juge de dire ça, instrumentalisés par le pouvoir rwandais. Et une des... Enfin, dites peut-être déjà ça.
So it is actually something very important, the fact that they allow Maître Lurquin to have access to the file. There might be a fear from the judges that they are being instrumentalized by the Rwandan authorities. So it is not a form of support. I don't think the Belgian authorities will support necessarily Mr. Rusesabagina, but it is clearly an indication that they do not support the kind of procedure and the way he has been adopted and the way things seems to be unfolding right now.
Mais il ne faut pas sous-estimer le pouvoir du pouvoir rwandais en Belgique, parce que je suis parti samedi et le jeudi, ils ont arrêté 3 Rwandais, dont mes clients.
Don't underestimate the influence of the Rwandan authorities on the Belgian authorities, because I left on Saturday and the following Thursday, they arrested 3 Rwandans in Belgium, 2 of whom are my clients.
C'est un dossier qui était ouvert il y a 5 ans, où mon client n'avait jamais été interrogé. Et ils ont décidé non seulement de l'interroger, mais de le mettre en prison 2 jours avant qu'on ne parte pouvoir poser sa vagina. Donc, ne sous-estimons pas l'adversaire.
Let's not underestimate the opponent. We are talking here of a file which had been inactive for 5 years, and the client had never been examined for all this period. And all of a sudden, he's not only examined, but put into prison. So let's not underestimate the opponent.
Monsieur Lurcan, do you think that the arrest of the Rwandans in Belgium was retaliation for your representing Paul Rusesabagina? Philippe, Karine, Anaïs, can you help me out?
Happy to go. Vincent, est-ce que vous pensez que l'arrestation de ces 3 Rwandais dernièrement, est-ce que c'était en réponse au fait que mon père a été arrêté au Rwanda, et est-ce que Kagame est en train de faire aujourd'hui?
Il n'y a personne en Belgique qui croit le contraire, évidemment.
Yes,
et ça, c'est évidemment quelque chose de grave. Mais donc, ça veut dire que à l'intérieur de la magistrature, ils ne sont pas tous du même côté. Et donc, c'est un peu pour ça qu'on doit rappeler aussi qui était votre père, parce que c'est quand même quelqu'un qui était, qu'on le présentait comme un héros, qui a sauvé des gens, qui a sauvé des vies, mais c'est il y a 25 ans, donc on doit reprendre un peu tout ça pour essayer de faire comprendre aux Belges qu'il faut soutenir la justice et non pas faire ce que l'on a fait il y a 3 jours, mais c'est clair que c'est grave en Belgique.
Yes, it is evident that this was a retaliation on the fact that Dad and the Belgians are trying to support Vincent in seeing my father in Kigali. And so this is clear. In Belgium, it's clear that the Rwandans are retaliating and because of the arrest, and also using their political pressure to do that. What's happening is, within the legal space in Belgium, there is some division where some people are more working with the Rwandans, for lack of a better word, instead of following the judicial process. So what happened last week when these 3 Rwandans were arrested out of nowhere is an example of that there are some friction within the Belgian system that allowed this to happen when it shouldn't have happened. And all of this is really a response to the Rwandan government into kind of the fact that Belgium has already tried to take a stand on this issue. It is important to know that, what my father is known for is what his heroism, what he did during the genocide. That was over 20 years ago. And so in Belgium, and he's known for safe people, he's a good man, a man of principle, a human rights advocate. But people in Belgium need to be educated to learn about that. Not all of the people know. So within the judicial system, people don't understand the context that we're working in, and some of this have allowed the arrest of these 3 people. But at the same time, there's also parts of the system that it's supporting and that wants to do the right thing, as in the regulatory commissions and other things like that.
Thank you, Anaïs. The next question is for Peter Robinson. Could you comment, and it comes from Sophie Neiman, a journalist who's been covering this situation closely. Could you comment from a legal perspective about the decision, although I think technically it was a suggestion, not a decision, to merge Mr. Rusesabagina's trial with that of 18 alleged members of the FLN, the Front Libération Nationale. And what does this mean for the case should it go forward in Rwanda? Peter, if you could take this one.
Yes, thank you, Kitty. There has been no decision to merge the cases yet, but the Prosecutor General has announced his intention to seek to have those cases merged. That requires the approval of the court, and that has not yet been applied for or has been granted. The procedure that we'll be seeing over the next few weeks is that charges will formally be lodged against Paul Rusesabagina, and he will be brought to court to answer those charges. At that time, the issue of joining his case with others will be discussed and debated and decided. But at this stage, his case is proceeding on its own.
Can we talk a little bit just about the problems logistically that any merging of the cases would bring up? And Brian, maybe you want to take that.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. Thank you, Ketty. Even logistically, Rwanda right now is a country that is under COVID lockdown. They have a curfew at 6 p.m. every night. The courts were completely closed and everything was done on video up until Paul's case. They actually cleaned out a courthouse and sanitized it, we understand, before Paul's case. It is a very small courthouse and a very small courtroom. At this point in time, it doesn't seem it would even be logistically possible to have 18 defendants plus Paul, plus all of their lawyers, plus the judges, plus the prosecutors in one place at the same time. We have no idea even physically how that would work, much less the legal details and consequences. So that seems like a very strange situation for the legal system to be putting itself in right now.
Thank you, Brian. And the next question comes from Radio Urumuri, and pardon me, Monsieur, from the radio station, if I butchered the name. I did not intend to. And this goes back to the origination of this whole situation, the kidnapping, the arrest, hijacking of the plane, or at least hijacking of Mr. Rusesabagina, who got onto a plane and did not know the destination. Could you please talk, Peter, about the illegality of the arrest, the kidnapping, Mr. Rusesabagina being held for 3 days, locked up and blindfolded so that he didn't know where he was? Could you talk about, is that a normal way for a Belgian citizen to be taken from his country into Rwanda to stand trial? Is this normal? Is this the way they've dealt with other Rwandan cases abroad?
Yeah, I think the answer is obvious, that it's not only abnormal, but illegal. So if you have a person residing in another country, you can obtain that person for criminal charges through extradition or deportation. And Paul Rusesabagina was living in San Antonio throughout the whole COVID-19 pandemic. And so if the Rwandan government wanted to legally obtain him for prosecution, they should have made a request to the United States government to either extradite or deport him. The United States government has granted deportation almost every time Rwanda has asked when they have sought people for cases involvement in the genocide. So if there was a legitimate case against Paul, it could have been presented to the United States authorities, and they would likely have extradited or deported him if it was a bona fide case. But instead, they didn't do that. Instead, they lured him to a place where they could take him by force and bring him to Rwanda, which is completely illegal. The remedies for that are normally before the court in which you appear. So you would, when you go to court in Rwanda, you would say, I've been arrested illegally, I need to be released, this prosecution is null and void. That wasn't done because he doesn't have lawyers who are fighting for him. And so the lawyers never brought up that issue before the Rwandan court. We have already made a complaint to the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Torture concerning the way Paul was treated after his arrest, as you've mentioned, being tied up and blindfolded and kept incommunicado for 3 days. We plan to make further complaints to the United Nations Working Group on Arbitrary Detention to ask for a finding that his arrest was illegal and his subsequent detention remains illegal to this day. We also have some other ideas of other courts that we may try to go to get some relief from this illegal arrest. Thank you.
And I would like to add that we haven't forgotten that GainJet bears some complicity. A GainJet plane transported him. The Dubai airport has not let any tapes be released of him getting on the plane. The Kigali airport has not shown any tapes of him getting off the plane. We don't know who was on the manifest. we haven't forgotten that GainJet has questions to answer. We hope that the media also has not forgotten that GainJet has questions to answer. Additionally, the Dubai government really has never said what happened at the airport, or the UAE government has not said what happened in the airport in Dubai. And this is not the first time that a Belgian citizen has disappeared from the airport in Dubai. There's more examination and more investigative journalism that needs to be done relative to both GainJet and the airport in Dubai. Additionally, we've had questions about what have the Belgians done when we've asked them why hasn't the Belgian government been stronger in demanding that their illegally arrested resident be returned home? And Anais and Corinne, I'd like to direct that one to you, since you have been talking with the Belgian State Department.
So the Belgians are still looking into the kidnapping. Apparently, they need more evidence of that, of how he got to Rwanda. In addition to that, the Belgian government. Belgium didn't have a government up until October 1st. So a lot of the processes have been stopped in relation to the Belgian safety position, the public position on the matter, and they're waiting for the cabinet of the new prime minister, as well as the full government, to be formed in order to further investigate the case and make a decision.
And have they specifically addressed, have they talked with you when you've raised the question with them about Paul being denied access to his Belgian attorneys and his international attorneys? And have they given you any kind of deadline for their investigation?
They have not.
And have they given you any idea about what other facts they need to learn before they will move?
So they were waiting for Maître Lurquin and Dad to speak in order to hear directly from Dad what happened. However, Maître Lurquin wasn't allowed to go see Dad, so even that was stopped from happening from the Rwandans.
Peter, I'm going to send this one back to you to speak on behalf of all of the international lawyers. The question is from one of the journalists who covers Rwanda quite a bit, even Mugisha. Rwanda's systems require foreign lawyers to apply at the Bar Association to represent a client in Rwanda. Have you sought the authorization from the Bar Association? If yes, what was their response? If no, I know that Monsieur Lurquin did cover this, but Peter, if you can kind of go back and summarize the problems with the Bar Association.
Yes. So Vincent, as he has explained to you, has applied with the Bar Association to be allowed to represent Paul Rusesabagina, and he spent the week looking for the bâtonnier, the president of the Bar Association, with no success. And Philippe also has presented his papers to the bâtonnier of the Rwandan Bar Association. The rest of us intend to do that once Gatera Gashambana is accepted as the lawyer for Paul Rusesabagina, and we can join that team. Thank you.
Mais comme Philippe l'a dit également, donc son bâtonnier est intervenu. Le bâtonnier de Bruxelles est intervenu de manière très claire quand j'étais au Rwanda. Il demandait une série de documents qu'on lui a donnés et le bâtonnier a demandé que le bâtonnier Uganda nous aide à voir M. Rusesabagina. Donc effectivement, l'ensemble des autres bâtonniers pourraient peut-être faire pression.
So both the bâtonnier of the Quebec Bar and the bâtonnier of the Brussels Bar intervened with Kavaruganda, the bâtonnier of the Kigali Bar Association, to request the necessary authorization for us. We're not talking of doing a trial here, but we're talking of seeing a client. So, and the necessary papers were sent, the authorizations, the request for authorizations were sent to Kaburaganda from both Quebec and Belgium. And despite that, there has never been a positive answer.
Thank you.
C'est vrai que les bâtonniers, peut-être de différents pays, pourraient intervenir auprès du bâtonnier Kaburaganda pour lui dire que le but de l'avocat, c'est pas d'interdire à l'avocat de voir son client, mais de lui permettre de le faire.
He calls for other bâtonniers, other heads of bars association from other countries to also intervene and ask why a lawyer would prevent another lawyer, a fellow lawyer, to see his own client. So there's a call to action to all bâtonniers and head of bar association to uphold.
And just to be clear, this has not happened to Philippe. When you have been in Rwanda before, you have not been barred from seeing, you have not been prevented from seeing your clients, correct?
Never, never.
This has only happened because you have uttered the name Rusesabagina, which is the name that cannot be said in Rwanda, according to Monsieur Lerquin.
Look, I did not receive a letter to that effect, but I don't see any other reasons, because this is the only thing that changed since last time I went there. Just for Maître Lurquin, since 5 years that his client has been freed, the only thing that changed in the meantime is the fact that he was appointed by the family of Mr. Rusesabagina to represent him. So, of course, he did not receive a letter from the Rwandan authorities telling him that, if you choose to represent Mr. Rusesabagina, you'll have this kind of problems, but there is a clear link between the two.
I just note of moderator privilege. I can't go to Rwanda because the president has said that I must be killed, but I have heard that in the Hotel Mille Collines, if you go to the gift shop, there are no copies of the movie Hotel Rwanda in the gift shop. Paul Rusesabagina's book, An Ordinary Man, is not available in the gift shop of the hotel that he saved during the genocide, along with those 1,268 people. And I have also been told that if you ask about Mr. Rusesabagina in the Hotel Mille Collines, the staff will look very scared and turn away from you. I've only heard this. I don't know it to be true, but I think that based upon Monsieur...
I did not ask. I don't know that Vincent did ask.
We've heard this from a few people over the years, and I apologize for my digression, but I think that it's further illustration of the fact that this is not a normal trial. This is being done for retaliation and as a political move against a humanitarian who has spent the last 15 years speaking out on behalf of people who have had their human rights violated, journalists who have been killed, political dissidents who have been jailed. And I think we know that that's why this trial is being handled the way it is. Brian, I'm going to throw it back to you for wrap up.
Thank you very much, Kitty. I'm going to pick up where Kitty left off there and just go through this a little bit more to bring things together. From a legal perspective on this case, Paul Rusesabagina was kidnapped in Dubai. He was brought by illegal rendition to Rwanda against his will. That is illegal under international law. He was arrested and is being detained illegally in Rwanda. Again, illegal under international law because he was not brought there legally. That is the absolute center point of this case. Paul Rusesabagina simply should not be there. Any of the other legal issues should not be discussed in that context. We'll go beyond that though, and we have spoken beyond that today. That's still the primary issue. But even if you accept that Paul is there and on trial, this is clearly also an illegal and completely unfair trial process in Rwanda. Paul's family and team, along with many, many past precedents in Rwandan cases, show that a fair and impartial trial is simply not going to happen in this case. Going very briefly through that timeline again, Paul was effectively tortured for the first 3 days he was in captivity, with his hands and feet bound and a blindfold on for that time. He's been held incommunicado from his family and from his family designated lawyers for much of the last 53 days and has only had a handful of contacts with the outside world. He has no access to his legal team until just this week. We're beginning to get access. The Rwandan government has consistently and continues to put up new blocks and new barriers every time a lawyer tries to see Paul, whether that is Gatera Gashabana, a respected lawyer in Kigali, or whether it is various members of the international legal team, including Vincent Larcan and Philippe Larochelle. The only lawyers who have represented Paul in court are from the Rwandan government. We fully believe they are representing the interests of the Rwandan government, and they have not been representing Paul's legal interest. As Kitty said, we know why this is happening. Paul Rusesabagina is seen by Rwandan President Kagame as his key political enemy, not because Paul is running against him for office, but because Paul speaks out in public. He speaks about human rights abuses. He speaks about the real situation in Rwanda. He speaks in ways that people inside of Rwanda are unable to speak in criticizing the current government that is there. That's what brought him to this position. And unfortunately, that's what says that Paul has no chance of a fair trial. I want to thank everyone who's joined us. I want to thank members of the family, Anais, Lise, Corinne, for being here. Excuse me. Thank you very much, Peter, Vincent, and Philippe, for giving the legal perspective, and Kitty Kurth and Kevin Lampy for putting this press conference together. Thank you all very much for joining us too.
Thank you and goodbye. If you have any further questions, you can send them via email. We appreciate your attention and your covering this matter. Thank you very much.
Nshuti muteze amatwi radiyo Urumuri rero murabyiyumviye nk'aho mwari muhibereye, mwiyumviye ikiganiro giteye amatsiko nk'uko nari nabibateguje, ngira ngo mwumvise amagambo menshi, mwumvise ibintu bishyashya byahindutse, ibintu bishyashya byaje kandi biteye amatsiko. Mwumvise nk'amagambo ya Maître Lurquin, d'ailleurs nzashaka kuzagira ngo nzamwegere ndebe ko twari ikiganiro twagirana tuvugane. Yari yabinyemereye, ndibaza ko urugendo rwe rujya mu Rwanda rwatumye abura umwanya, ariko hari ibintu byinshi bishya byaje muri dosiye ya Rusesabagina. Turaza kubiganiraho mu kanya kuko ngira ngo mfite na mugenzi wanjye Emmanuel Senga ubu ngubu muri studio, ngira ngo tuze gufatanya kureba uko icyo kintu umuntu yakivuga, kuko harimo ibintu byinshi byahindutse. Leta y'u Rwanda imaze kwigonda, imaze kugondama, kuko aho bigeze ntabwo igishoboye, nta kindi gishoboye kuri ya dosiye. Tuza kubiganiraho mu kanya rero, tubabarire hari isaha y'amakuru yarenzeho gatoya, ariko ndi kumwe na mugenzi wanjye Emmanuel Senga witeguye nyine kutugezaho amakuru yateguriye aho ari muri studio ya 3 ya radiyo Urumuri. Akaba rero mu kanya agira ngo atugezeho amakuru. Nagira ngo mubwire acane kamera ye, nagira mubwire ngo acane kamera ye, noneho dutangire gahunda nyine y'amakuru, kuko ndibaza ko yiteguye. Ndabona yatugezeho. Bwana Emmanuel Senga, ndakubona. Umeze neza? Wiriwe neza?
Wiriwe Bwana Loyizi, uranyumva?
Turakumva rwose, turakumva neza. Turanakubona, umeze neza, uraryoshye aho muri Amerika. Ya, turi mu biganiro biryoshye bishyushye. Twari mu biganiro biryoshye bishyushye, utubabarire kuba twatinje gahunda yaweho gakeya. Abanyarwanda barakeneye kubyumva, bari bagaragaje ishyushyu ryinshi, kuko ni ibintu bidasanzwe bari bakeneye. Ikaze rero, ndagira ngo ntagutindiye, kubera ko nagutwaye n'umwanya, ndagira ngo dutangire amakuru yacu. Ndibaza ko witeguye.
Nditeguye, nta kibazo.
Ya, ikaze. Reka yewe nigire mu bwihisho. Reka nigire mu bwihisho, hanyuma nkurekere umwanya rugari, mikoro na kamera, noneho utugezeho amakuru mu Kinyarwanda.
Kurikirana amakuru mu Kinyarwanda kuri radiyo Urumuri. Amakuru ava impande enye z'isi yose. Amakuru acukumbuye, amakuru yuzuye ubusesenguzi, nta handi wayasanga uretse kuri radiyo Urumuri.
Abakunzi ba radiyo Urumuri, turabashuhuje tubifuriza umugoroba mwiza n'ijoro byiza aho muherereye hose. Muri kumwe nanjye Emmanuel Senga muri studio 3 ya radiyo Urumuri iri hano muri North Carolina, Durham, muri Leta Zunze za Amerika. Ikaze kuri mwese mu makuru y'umugoroba wo kuwa kane tariki 15 Ukwakira 2020. Amakuru agizwe n'ingingo zikurikira. Mu Rwanda, ihingwa ry'urumogi rwa cannabis rwagizwe umushinga wa leta. Ese kuwukoresha bizongera kwitwa icyaha? Mu Rwanda kandi, urubanza rw'umunyamakuru Focus Ndayizera n'itsinda rye rwarakomeje i Nyanza mu ntara y'Amajyepfo. Naho mu Burundi, abagize impuzamashyaka CEFOR ntibumvikana ku byakorwa ngo bavuge rumwe. Mu gihugu cya Repubulika na Demokarasi ya Kongo, ikibazo cy'ubutabera kiraganirwaho n'inzego nshingamategeko na nyubahirizategeko. Muri icyo gihe, abayoboke ba Martin Fayulu bakwijwe imishwarugo bigaragambyaga. Mu karere ka East Africa haravugwa inkongi y'umuriro yibasiye ibice by'umusozi wa Kilimanjaro yo muri Tanzania. Naho muri Somalia, Al-Shabaab ikomeje kwambura amahoro, ari nako igwiza ubutunzi. Hakurya y'amazi muri Leta Zunze za Amerika, Joe Biden akomeje kuza imbere ya Donald Trump mu majwi yatangwa n'abaturage, ariko muri Amerika perezida atorwa n'inteko y'abatozi. Izi nizo ngingo ngiye kubarambura mu kanya gato gakurikira. Mu Rwanda, inkuru y'ihingwa ry'urumogi ahantu hatazwi yagejejwe ku Banyarwanda iturutse ku itangazo ryashyizweho umukono n'umuyobozi wa RGB Claire Kamanzi. Uyu nawe yemeza ko ari icyemezo cy'inama y'abaminisitiri yari iherutse guterana. Nyamara mu myanzuro yashyizwe hanze n'iyo nama nta cyemezo cyo guhinga urumogi cyayisohotsemo. Ibiramambe Abanyarwanda begerewe n'itangazamakuru bagaragaje impungenge ku cyemezo nk'iki, mu gihe byari bisanzwe bizwi ko cannabis ifatwa nk'ikiyobyabwenge gihanirwa mu mategeko y'u Rwanda ari uwagikoresheje cyangwa se ugicuruza. RGB ariko yo ikemeza, ndetse na Minisitiri w'Ubuzima, ko ubuhinzi bwacyo bugamije intego ebyiri, iy'ubucuruzi n'iy'ubukungu. Inkuru irambuye reka tuyigezweho na Jean Claude Mwambutsa wa BBC Gahibuzo Miryango.
Itangazo ryashyizwe ahagaragara n'ikigo cy'igihugu cy'iterambere RDB rivuga ko u Rwanda rushaka kubyaza umusaruro igihingwa cy'urumogi ku nyungu z'ubuvuzi. RDB ibona uru rwego nk'urwashorwamo imari irahamagarira abashoramari kwinjira mu ipiganwa kugira ngo babe bakwemererwa kwinjira muri ubu buhinzi bugamije ubucuruzi. Iki kigo kivuga ko umusaruro w'urumogi uzajya woherezwa mu mahanga mu nganda zikomeye zikora imiti. Ubwo yavugira kuri televiziyo y'igihugu, Minisitiri w'Ubuzima Dr Daniel Ngamije yasobanuye iby'ubu buhinzi budasanzwe.
Kigiye gukorwa no kubihinga mu buryo bwa kinyamwuga kandi bikoherezwa hanze. Ni ibimera byifashishwa mu gukora imiti yifashishwa mu kuvura abarwayi bafite uburibwe bukabije, mu gufasha abantu bafite ibibazo byo mu buzima bwo mu mutwe. Twari dusanzwe rero twitumiza hanze, ariko turashaka natwe kugira uruhare mu gutanga ibyangombwa kugira ngo ibigo by'ubushakashatsi ndetse n'ibigo bikora imiti nk'iyo ngiyo tubiha ibyo bakeneye kugira ngo bakore iyo miti kandi tuninjiza amafaranga.
Mu Rwanda guhinga, gucuruza cyangwa se kunywa urumogi byitwa gukoresha ibiyobyabwenge kandi bigahanwa bikomeye n'amategeko. Bigenze gute rero ngo igihugu cyemere igihingwa gisanzwe kibujijwe n'amategeko? Nta kurikirana se izongera kubaho ku muntu watahuweho uru rumogi? Umukuru w'urukiko rw'ikirenga Bwana Faustin Ziryayo yabwiye abanyamakuru ko nta cyahindutse ku mikurikiranire y'iki cyaha.
Ibintu ni bibiri: kugihinga mu rwego guverinoma yavuze bikurikije ibyoherezwa mu mahanga. Icya kabiri, kuba kunywa urumogi ari icyaha. Ni icyaha nyine politike ya guverinoma yafashe, ntabwo ari ukuvuga yuko kunywa urumogi atari icyaha. Kunywa urumogi ni icyaha gihanwa n'amategeko kandi kizagumya gukurikiranwa gihanwe n'amategeko.
Kugeza ubu nta kirasobanurwa ku buryo uru rumogi ruzahingwa n'ibizaba byujujwe n'uzemererwa kwinjira muri ubu buhinzi. Icyahishuwe gusa ni uko u Rwanda rwinjiye muri ubu buhinzi ku nyungu z'amafaranga. Uretse akayabo gateganywa kwinjira mu isanduku ya leta, RDB iravuga ko ibikorwa byo guhinga urumogi bizatanga imirimo ku banyarwanda benshi, uhereye ku nzobere mu buhinzi ukagera ku bahinzi bo hasi bategerejweho imirimo y'amaboko. Ku bafite impungenge zo kwemerera ikiyobyabwenge guhingwa ku mugaragaro, RDB ivuga ko ubuhinzi ndetse n'ubucuruzi bw'uru rumogi buzagenzurwa cyane kandi bukubahiriza amategeko mpuzamahanga y'ubugenzuzi. Jean Claude Mwambutsa, BBC Gahuzamiryango, i Kigali.
Arakoze Jean Claude Mwambutsa. Mu Rwanda kandi ku rwego rw'ubutabera haravugwa iburanishwa ry'urubanza ruvuregwamo umunyamakuru Focus Ndayizera na bagenzi be bafunze guhera muri 2018 baregwa kurema umutwe w'iterabwoba ngo wagomba gukora ibikorwa byo kwangiza ibikorwa remezo bya leta wifashishije ibiturika. Mu rukiko rukuru rw'i Nyanza, Focus Ndayizera n'umwunganira bireguye berekana ko ibyaha baregwa ko bitari gushoboka kuko bisaba ikoranabuhanga batari bafite, kandi basobanura n'impamvu basinyiye ibyo bari bashinjwe, bemeza ko babikoze bigura kubera ko bakorewe iyicarubozo ngo babyemere. Inkuru mu magambo arambuye turayikesha Eric Bagirubusa w'Ijwi ry'Amerika.
Umunyamakuru Bwana Focus Ndayizera n'umunyamategeko umwunganira Maître Paul Ntare nibo basa n'abihariye umwanya w'iburanisha ry'umunsi banenga ibirego by'ubushinjacyaha. Ahereye ku cyaha cyo gucura umugambi wo kugira nawe ubutegetsi buriho cyangwa perezida wa Repubulika, umunyamakuru Ndayizera yabwiye umucamanza ko bitari bushoboke ko acura uwo mugambi kandi abaregwa nabo batari baziranye. Ndayizera yibukije ko mu kirego cy'ubushinjacyaha bavuga ko umugambi wo guhirika ubutegetsi buriho mu Rwanda wacuzwe n'ihuriro nyarwanda RNC rivugaho ko ryashinzwe na General Faustin Kayumba Nyamwasa rirangije ribunyuza mu muyoboke waryo Cassien Ntamuhanga. Yatsembye ko atigeze avugana n'umunyamakuru Bwana Cassien Ntamuhanga haba kuri telefone ndetse no mu buryo bwari bwo bwose. Uyu Ntamuhanga ni ufatwa nk'umukuru w'itsinda kandi ubutegetsi bwemeje ko yatorotse inzego z'ubutabera. Ndayizera yabwiye urukiko ko dosiye yabajijwe agifatwa n'inzego z'umutekano atariyo yaregeshejwe mu rukiko. Aravuga ko agifatwa mu mwaka w'2018 yatangiye abazwa ku mikorere ye mu itangazamakuru, ariko ageze mu rukiko yisanga aregwa ibyo gushaka guhirika ubutegetsi. Aravuga ko iyo dosiye ariyo yagombye kuba ari ishingiro ry'urubanza. Umucamanza ukuriye inteko iburanisha yabwiye uregwa ko ibyo ntacyo byamarira urukiko kuko iyo dosiye avuga ntaho igaragarana cyane ko ngo atariyo yaregeye urukiko. yavuze ko iyo hakorwa amaperereza harebwa ibigize icyaha bikaba aribyo biregerwa urukiko. Focus Ndayizera yakomeje gutsimbarara akavuga ko ubugenzacyaha bwagejeje dosiye imurega ku bushinjacyaha nyuma yo gufata icyemezo kimufunga by'agateganyo. Bwana Ndayizera yongeye gushimangira ko iyo dosiye aburana n'ubushinjacyaha yagiye ahabwa inyandiko zayo akazishyiraho imikono ku gahato atazi ibizikubiyemo, mu gihe dosiye avuga ko yabazwagaho by'itangazamakuru yari yayisomye anayishyiraho imikono yemera azi ibiyikubiyemo. Amajwi yatanzwe mu rukiko n'ubushinjacyaha yumvikanamo Kasiye Ntamuhanga n'uwitwa Tembo bagaruka ku gucura umugambi wo guhanahana ibiturika no kwifatwa rya Ndayizera na bagenzi be. Ayo majwi uregwa yavuze ko uko yumvikana atari umwimerere. Mu magambo ye yabwiye umucamanza ko ayo majwi yakozwe mu buryo bwa teatre cyangwa ikinamico, kuko ngo hari aho Ntamuhanga yumvikana nk'uri kuri telefone mu gihe uwitwa Tembo we yumvikanaga nk'uri muri studio. Metere Ntare yabwiye urukiko ko ibimenyetso by'ubushinjacyaha bushingiraho buregwa uwo yunganira bivuguruzanya kandi ko bufata Ndayizera bukamushyira ku rwego atariho. Nawe yemeza ko ibyaha Focus Ndayizera yabyemejwe ku gahato. Yavuze ko Tembo ushinjwa ko ari we washyikirije Ndayizera ibiturika ari baringa muri iki kirego. Asaba ko niba koko ubu yarabayeho ubushinjacyaha bwagombye kugaragaza niba bwaramuhishiriye cyangwa se bukaba bwaramurekuye by'agateganyo. Abiregura bakomeza kwibaza ku buryo Tembo yashyikirije ibiturika Ndayizera yamara kubimugezaho nyuma y'iminota 30 Ndayizera agatabwa muri yombi. Tembo ntagaragare kandi bivuga ko byari yabiraranye biturutse mu Burundi. Uyu munyamategeko yatinze kuri raporo yakozwe n'inzobere za gisirikare ku biturika iri tsinda riregeshwa. Yavuze ko bafite impungenge ko ibyiswe ibisasu n'ubushinjacyaha abaregwa bashobora kuzabihanirwa barengana. Yibukije ko raporo y'abahanga yavuze ko kugira ngo ibyagaragajwe biturike bisaba kubanza guhuza insinga, mu gihe ubushinjacyaha bwo buvuga ko byari bukorwe hifashishijwe telefone ngendanwa batagombye guhuza insinga. Ibyaha byo kugambana no gushishikariza abandi gukora iterabwoba n'ibyaha by'ubwinjiracyaha mu gukoresha ibintu biturika binyuranije n'amategeko Focus Ndayizera n'ubwunganizi babihakanye. Undi wagize icyo avuga ku birego by'ubushinjacyaha ni Bwana Eliakim Karanga. Ubushinjacyaha buvuga ko ariwe muhanga wagombaga gukora sisitemu yo guturitsa ibisasu hirya no hino mu gihugu. Uyu wafashe umwanya muto nawe yahakanye ibyaregwa byose maze abyita ibinyoma byambaye ubusa. Yabwiye urukiko ko agitabwa muri yombi yategetswe n'inzego z'umutekano gushinja umunyamakuru Focus Ndayizera ko ngo yafatanywe ibiturika. Karangwa aravuga ko ibyafatiriwe bishinjwa Ndayizera nk'uko bivugwa bitakorana n'amashanyarazi. Uyu nawe wemera ko ari umuhanga mu by'ikoranabuhanga wanabiherewe ibihembo ku rwego rw'igihugu mu mwanya muto yakoresheje, yabwiye urukiko ko agitabwa muri yombi n'inzego z'umutekano zagiye mu kigo cye yakoreragamo iby'ikoranabuhanga bakura ibikoresho maze ngo baheraho babimuregesha ko ariyo byagombaga kwifashishwa mu guturitsa ibisasu. Yasabye urukiko ko ibiturika bivugwa ko inzego zabifatanye Ndayizera byagaragazwa maze n'ibikoresho bya Karangwa bikagaragazwa bigasuzumwa n'abahanga mu biturika. Yasobanuriye urukiko ko yamenye Focus Ndayizera nk'umunyamakuru wamusuraga mu kigo baganira ku by'ikoranabuhanga byatumaga namenyekana kanamwamamariza ibikorwa bye. Abaregwa babiri ari b'umunyamakuru Focus Ndayizera n'umuhanga mu by'ikoranabuhanga Eliakim Karangwa ntacyo baravuga ku byifuzo by'ubushinjacyaha buheruka gusabira itsinda ryose igihano cyo gufunga ubuzima bwabo bwose. Byitezwe kuko ari 13 nibarangiza kwiregura ubushinjacyaha buzasubirana ijambo rya nyuma maze abaregwa nabo bakazagira icyo bavuga ku bihano basabiwe. Abaregwa muri urubanza batangiye gutabwa muri yombi kuva mu mwaka wa 2018. Iburanisha rirakomeza kuri uyu wa kane tariki ya 15 z'uku kwezi kwa 10. Bagira ubusa ijwi rya Amerika, Nyanza mu majyepfo y'u Rwanda.
Arakoze Eric Bagira ubusa. Mu Burundi, mu gihugu giherereye mu majyepfo y'u Rwanda, amashyaka atavuga rumwe n'ubutegetsi yibumbuye mu mpuzamashyaka CEFOR anenga leta y'u Burundi ko ishyira mu bikorwa ibyavuye mu masezerano y'amahoro yasinywe hagati y'abarundi ashyiriweho umukono i Arusha muri Tanzania, yatangiye kugira ubwumvikane buke hagati y'abayoboye. Impamvu nyamukuru ariko ikaba ukutumvikana ku muvugizi w'impuzamashyaka wari umaze kugaragaza ko yari aherutse kwandikira leta y'u Burundi abubwira ko amashyaka yabo azakoresha ingufu ngo ayo masezerano ashyirwe mu bikorwa. CEFOR Arusha nk'uko yitwa, umuvugizi wayo Emmanuel Ndereyimana yabiganiriye na Frederico Nkundikije wa BBC Gahuzamiryango.
Ni musanzwe icuka kibi cyatanguye ku itariki 2 z'ukw'umunani aho uwo turi kumwe mu runani yahora ari umuvugizi Jeremy Minani yandika urwandiko amenyesha leta y'u Burundi ko mu mezi 2 batisubiye ko ngo bikubita agashi ko azobatera. Sinzi kubwo rwandiko mwagumvise akoresheje umuheto. Hanyuma twebwe rero tuca turabona tuti uyu muntu adushize mu mutego turakora inama turamubwira tuti ibyo bintu uhejeje gushikangariza abarundi n'amakungu ntawe mwabivuganye kuko twebwe turi urunani rukeneye impinduka mu Burundi duciye mu nzira za politike na diplomasi nta bintu byo gufata umuheto twe duharanira hanyuma tuhitamo kumukura kuba umuvugizi kuko n'ibintu byari bigiye kudukwegera urabona na leta y'u Burundi ishobora guca ifatiraho iti ba bantu bariko bakoresha inguvu z'umuheto n'ibiki kugira ngo dufatirwe ibihano ku rwego rw'amakungu n'abandi bose baba bumva urunani rwacu ingene bari babitegereye atariko bukimwe.
Jeremy Minani mwamukuriye mu nama nkuru y'urunani?
Twamukuye ku giti c'umuvugizi bazi inama ikoranye baca bashinga icyo gikorwa jewe nka umuvugizi wa Sephora Arusha. Ubwo rero ejo bundi aho dukoreye inama yo guhindura biro isanzwe itwara Sephora Arusha kuko ikiringo cyayo cyicari kirangiye aho itwagwa na perezida w'umugwengezo Shobino niho twari dukwiye turi 12 koromu yari ikwiye hanyuma turiga ingene amategeko avuga ingene twosubiriza uwahahora usanga ingingo ya 16 article 16 hari ibintu bifobetse ukuntu vuga ngo ibintu byo gusubiriza uwahahora biciye muri ordre alphabétique.
Mu majambo make murashaka kutubwira abategetsi bagize ubwo runani?
Ubu runani muri uwo mwanya twagwa na Bamvuginyumvira Frederico icegera ciwe akaba uwitwa Rwigemera Jean Bosco na jewe Ndereyimana Emmanuel nkaba ni secrétaire général nkasubira nkaba n'umuvugizi. Mu gihe rero twari ko dutunganya iyo nama gutyo ngo tugire icyo gushikako barisohoye mu nama ari batanu. Jeremy arasohoka mu nama Ndayikengurukiye asiga avuze ko atanze imihoho ku giti ciwe ca secrétaire général hanyuma tubona bagiye ari batanu ariko amategeko araturekurira kubandanya turi indwi muri abindwi twarabandanije ibikorwa nk'uko amategeko abiturekurira hanyuma tubicisha mu matora rero haratowe Bamvuginyumvira abe perezida Rwigemera abe icegera na jewe n'umuvugizi na secrétaire général.
Umuntu arashaka kuvuga muri iki gihe ko ashobora kuba ari Sephora zibiri abo bashinga ntahe ntibashobora kuba bariko barashinga Sephora yabo nabo aho nuvuga Minani Jeremy na Jean Bosco Ndayikengurukiye.
Mu bisanzwe bo bari cyane bahengamiye cyane mu bintu byo gukoresha inguvu ibigwanisho nta Sephora ikoresha inguvu n'ibigwanisho ibaho ibyo bakoze ahubwo tuca tubona umengo ibintu ariko barakoreshwa n'ubutegetsi bwa Bujumbura kuko ibintu baje gukora muri Sephora Arusha tubona ko ahubwo ari ibisigarira by'abari basigaye igihe basambura penarere nibo bari baje rero kudutera ingorane. Durishije rero ko baraye bikuyemo Sephora tugiye kubandanya ibikorwa ibyo byabo bishizemo byo gushaka gukora bakoresheje umuheto barikore ariko ntibakazitire Sephora. Urumva abantu n'ubu rero muri Sephora Arusha turi gufata yuko ko bikuye mu nama bakagenda ntibakiri muri Sephora baragiye ibyo bindi barimwo iruhande ibikorwa tutazi dutangazwa gusa nuko tubona bariko bariyitirira ibikorwa bya Sephora Arusha bakoze ibindi biro iruhande urumva n'ibintu byo gutoba byo kuba barasamaza abantu ariko twebwe muri Sephora Arusha turi ku kivi turiko turakora ukuri kwamye twebwe Sephora Arusha turi ku kivi abarundi bavyumve amakungu avyumve nta cahindutse abo biyadukije ubwo kumbure bagiye kubitagashi basubire baje ku murongo.
Ikivi c'urunani Sephora ntigishobora kuba carataye agaciro muri iki gihe hari leta nshasha yo mu Burundi?
Ahubwo ubu niho ibikorwa bikomeye rya leta nshasha murazi ko mu makanda iyo ahora atwara igihugu ari we nyakwigendera Nkurunziza amabi yatumye tukora urunani ngo turabe ko ibintu byogaruka itoto mu Burundi dusubije amasezerano y'Arusha ngo asubire atubere icumu twishimikije kugira ngo igihugu kigende neza. Murabona ko amabi akibandanya ahubwo ubu niho tugiye nyine kubikenyera ngo zigume kugira ngo turabe ko agateka kazina muntu mu Burundi kosubira kakagarukirwa.
Emmanuel Ndereyimana umuvugizi urunani Sephora Arusha mukaba kandi n'umunyamabanga w'urwo runani murakoze cyane rwose ku kanya muhaye radio Ijwi ry'Amerika.
Murakoze namwe bwana mumenyesha makuru.
Emmanuel Ndereyimana mu kiganiro na mugenzi wacu Frederic Nkundikije.
Tukiri mu karere reka tunyarukiye muri Repubulika na Demokarasi ya Kongo aho ejo kuwa gatatu tariki ya 14 Ukwakira 2020 polisi yaburijemo imyigaragambyo yari yateguwe n'abayishyigikiye Martin Fayulu. Mu gitondo cyo kuwa gatatu tariki ya 14 Ukwakira 2020 imbere ya saa sita, polisi mu mujyi wa Kinshasa yatatanije abayoboke b'ishyaka rya Martin Fayulu, akaba n'umuhuzabikorwa w'impuzamashyaka ryitwa Lamuka. Iyi myigaragambyo yari yatangiriye ahitwa icyanya cya Place Pascal muri Cyangu, ariko ntiyigeze irenga urutindo rwa Matete, aho polisi yakoresheje impombo z'amazi kugira ngo itatanye abigaragambyaga. Iyo myigaragambyo yari igamije gushyigikira ubumwe bw'igihugu no kurwanya igabanwa rya Repubulika Iharanira Demokarasi ya Kongo mu duhugu twinshi, ibizwi nka balkanisation mu rurimi rw'igifaransa. Muri icyo gihe kandi imodoka ya Martin Fayulu nayo yari itobowe imipira. Niki kivugwa ku bacamanza baherutse gushyirwaho na Perezida Felix Tshisekedi? Nk'uko byakunze kumvikana no gusomwa mu bitangazamakuru bya Repubulika Iharanira Demokarasi ya Kongo, abanyekongo bamwe bemeza ko ishyirwa mu myanya ry'abacamanza bamwe ritakurikije amategeko. Umuyobozi w'agateganyo w'urukiko rurinda iremezo ry'itegeko nshinga akaba n'umushinjacyaha mukuru wa Repubulika, Jean Paul Mukolo Mpolesha, yatangaje ko ibyemezo bya Perezida Felix Tshisekedi yafashe ashyira mu myanya abacamanza bamwe na bamwe byari bikurikije amategeko. Jean Paul Mukolo yongeyeho ko ndetse abacamanza bazarahirira imirimo yabo mishya mu minsi ya vuba, nk'uko itangazamakuru rikorera ibiro bya Perezida wa Repubulika ribivuga. Ibiro bya Perezida bikamenyekanisha ko Perezida wa Repubulika yari aherutse kwakira abagize biro y'inama nkuru y'ubutabera, Conseil supérieur de la magistrature CSM. Ku meza y'imikirano yabo hari ibungabungwa ry'ubutegetsi bw'ubutabera. Jean Paul Mukolo yemeje ko ubutegetsi bw'ubutabera bwifashe neza kandi ko bubanye neza n'izindi nzego z'ubutegetsi z'igihugu. Abari bagize ubutegetsi bw'ubutabera babonanye na Perezida wa Repubulika barimo Perezida w'agateganyo w'urukiko rurinda iremezo rw'itegeko nshinga, Perezida wa mbere w'urukiko rusesa imanza, umushinjacyaha mukuru w'urukiko rusesa imanza, umunyamabanga uhoraho w'inama nkuru y'ubutabera hamwe na Perezida w'ishyirahamwe ry'abacamanza. Nanone kandi muri Repubulika Iharanira Demokarasi ya Kongo, ikibazo cy'urukiko rushinzwe iremezo ry'itegeko nshinga cyaje ku meza ya Perezida Felix Tshisekedi na Alexis Tambwe, Perezida wa Sena, na Janine Mabunda, Perezida w'inteko ishinga amategeko umutwe w'abadepite. Abayobozi b'inteko ishinga amategeko imitwe yombi, Alexis Tambwe wa Sena na Janine Mabunda, bakiriwe na Perezida Felix Tshisekedi kuri wa kabiri tariki ya 13 Ukwakira. Uwo mubonano ukaba warabereye muri Cité de l'Union Africaine Kinshasa, nk'uko byanditswe na ibiro ntaramakuru by'ibiro bya Perezida. Abayobozi b'inteko ishinga amategeko bamaze kwakirwa n'umukuru w'igihugu birinze kugira byinshi babwira itangazamakuru, usibye kuvuga ko baganiriye ku bibazo by'urukiko rurinda ubusigire bw'itegeko nshinga. Perezida wa Sena yabivuze muri aya magambo ati: twashatse kungurana ibitekerezo na Perezida wa Repubulika ku bibazo bireba urukiko rurinda ubusigire bw'itegeko nshinga. Twaganiriye icyo kibazo ku buryo bwuzuye burimo ukuri, hanyuma nawe atugezaho ibyifuzo bye, tukaba tuzongera guhura. Asoza yongeraho ko bamubwiye ko baziritse ku byanditswe mu itegeko nshinga. Asoza, Janine Mabunda yavuze ko bari bafite umukoro ukomeye wo kubwira Perezida wa Repubulika ibibazo byose bijyanye n'imikorere n'imikoranire y'inzego za leta. Ati tugomba kumubwira iki inteko ikora, ni ukuvuga gushyiraho amategeko no kugenzura guverinoma. Ni amakuru dukesha Radio Okapi. Mu karere ka East Africa Community, igice cy'umusozi wa Kilimanjaro ku ruhande rwa Tanzania cyafashwe n'inkongi y'umuriro kuva ku cyumweru gishize tariki ya 11 Ukwakira. Kilimanjaro ikaba iri mu bintu bikurura ba mukerarugendo bazanywe no kuyiterera no kwirebera amasimbi yo ku gasongero kayo. Iyi nkongi y'umuriro ikaba ingana no gutakaza amafaranga ava mu bukerarugendo ku gihugu cya Tanzania ndetse na Kenya, aho abaturage babarirwa kuri miliyoni 2 batunzwe n'ibikorerwa kuri uwo musozi wa Kilimanjaro, birimo amazi n'imvura bifashisha abahinzi borozi b'ako karere. Ni inkuru dukesha The Citizen. mu karere nanone mu gihugu cya Somalia raporo za nyuma ziratangaza ko Al-Shabaab mu gihe kiri munsi y'umwaka yarundanyije miliyoni 13 z'amadolari guhera mu kwezi kwa 12 na 19 kugeza mu kwezi kwa 8 uyu mwaka. Raporo y'akanama ka Loni gashinzwe amahoro ku isi muri raporo yako katanze muri iki cyumweru kemeza ko ayo mafaranga Al-Shabaab yakusanyije yavanye mu bwambuzi no guca amahoro atemewe. Iyo raporo ivuga ko nubwo Al-Shabaab yafatiwe ibihano ariko ishobora gukoresha za banki za Somalia ndetse no kugurisha amazu ikongera umutungo wayo. Bikaba bibangamiye cyane igihugu cya Kenya gihora gihanganye n'ibitero bya Al-Shabaab. Gusa umunyamabanga mukuru muri Minisiteri y'Ingabo za Kenya Monica Juma yabwiye abasirikari ko batagomba gucika intege kubera ko Somalia igize umutekano na Afurika y'Iburasirazuba iwugize. Ati yego Al-Shabaab iracyateye ubwoba ku mutekano wacu atariko yacitse intege ku buryo bugaragara. Ati imbaraga zanyu muri AMISOM nizo kwishimira. Ibiro ntaramakuru Reuters birasanga ariko Al-Shabaab ikomeje kugira imishinga y'ishoramari muri Mogadishu. Urugero rw'umujyi wa Kismayo wonyine rwerekana ko Al-Shabaab ifite amafaranga kuko muri uwo mujyi wonyine Al-Shabaab yabashije kwasaruza miliyoni 5,800,000 by'amadolari akomotse ku misoro. Ni inkuru dukesha East African. Dusoreze ku nkuru ivugwa ku matora muri Leta Zunze Ubumwe za Amerika. Amakuru agaruka ku ibarura ry'amajwi n'abaturage batoye hajyaho icyo bita abatozi. Mu gihe twegereza umunsi w'amatora muri Leta Zunze Ubumwe za Amerika, Joe Biden aza ku isonga mbere ya Donald Trump. Nubwo kugenzura uko amajwi yashobora gutangwa atari kuri nyakuri ku bizava mu matora, ariko byerekana uko aho ibintu bigana. Ariko nanone mu matora ya Leta Zunze Ubumwe za Amerika, hejuru y'amajwi ya buri watoye hariho ayandi majwi ashingirwaho ari nayo yemeza umukandida watsinze amatora. Mwibuka ko mu matora yo muri 2016 Hillary Clinton yarushiga Donald Trump amajwi miliyoni 3, aya yitwa amajwi y'abaturage, ariko ntibyamumuje gutsindwa. Nk'uko ibintu bihagaze, Joe Biden arahabwa 52% mu gihe Donald Trump ahabwa 42%. Ariko amatora nyamatora ya perezida wa Leta Zunze Ubumwe za Amerika yemezwa n'itsinda ry'abantu 538 bagize icyo bita abatozi, electors. Abatozi baturuka ku buto cyangwa ku bunini bwa leta. Nk'ubu leta nini ya California ifite abatozi 55, mu gihe leta nto za Wyoming, Alaska na Washington DC zifite buri imwe amajwi 3. Buri mukandida aba agomba gutora ku buryo gutsindira kuba perezida wa Leta Zunze Ubumwe za Amerika ugomba kugira nibura 270 kuri 538 ashoboka. Dore ingero z'umubare w'abatozi muri buri leta ndatanga nkeya. Wyoming ifite 3, New York ifite amajwi 29, California ifite amajwi 55, Texas ifite amajwi 38, Florida ifite amajwi 29. Ikindi nuko muri ayo matora utsindiye kuri 50.1% muri leta iyi niyi atwara amajwi yose y'abatozi. Urugero, umukandida ubonye nka 50.1% muri Texas atwara amajwi 38 y'abatozi. Ni inkuru dukesha BBC News. Inshuti bakunzi ba radiyo Urumuri, ni kuri iyi nkuru y'amatora aruhije kumva muri Leta Zunze Ubumwe za Amerika dushoreje amakuru yacu y'umugoroba, tuyibutsa gusura imbuga nkoranyambaga za radiyo Urumuri no kuzikwirakwiza. Ahasigaye reka mbifurize kumererwa neza iwanyu aho ngaho, mukomeze mugire amahoro mu ngo zanyu, muramukeho, tuzabonana ubutaha.
arakoze mugenzi wanjye Emmanuel Senga utugejejeho amakuru ku buryo burambuye, amakuru mu rurimi rw'ikinyarwanda. Nk'uko mubyumvise nyine amakuru arimo ay'iwacu, arimo ayo mu karere ndetse n'ayo ku isi. Tukaba rero tumushimiye. Ayo makuru akaba ari yatugejeje no ku musozo w'ibiganiro byacu by'uyu munsi, ibiganiro byaranzwe n'inama n'itangazamakuru yakozwe, yari ya kabiri, inama y'umuryango wa Paul Rusesabagina ufatanije n'abamuhagarariye mu rwego rw'amategeko, abavoka nyine, umuryango we washatse. Ariko nk'uko mubyumvise, leta y'u Rwanda ikaba yari yarabanze abo bavoka, ariko aho ibintu bigeze ubu ngubu bashyizemo ingufu. Leta y'u Rwanda ni kimwe n'uko waba uri kwirukankana n'umuntu musiganwa, noneho byageraho we akananirwa cyangwa se akagwa ku ruhande, ugakomeza wowe ukaba ari wowe uri bugere ku murongo wenyine. Leta y'u Rwanda rero ngubu iri gusigara, ururimi rwagiye bikurikije igitutu cy'abanyamategeko, igitutu cy'amahanga, ndetse no ariko cyane cyane kuba nta mpamvu ifite, kuba leta y'u Rwanda yarakoze amakosa, ibyo byonyine nibyo bitesheje umurongo, nibyo bitesheje agaciro muri ya dosiye y'urubanza rwa Paul Rusesabagina. Navuga ko leta y'u Rwanda amakosa yakoze, amakosa yiyemereye imbere y'itangazamakuru, yewe bitemewe n'abantu basanzwe, kuko na perezida we ubwe yabishimangiye nawe akabyemerera ko bakoze ayo makosa. Amakosa akomeye arimo ayo gushimuta, arimo ayo kuyobya indege, amakosa ubundi agira inkurikizi zikomeye cyane mu rwego mpuzamahanga, ndetse abakurikiye icyo kiganiro tuzabigarukaho. Ariko mwumvise ko aricyo kibazo gikomeye nabajije abari abanyamategeko ba Paul Rusesabagina, kuko radiyo Urumuri nyine yari ihari. Ikibazo nabajije gikomeye ni ibyerekeranye iyo procedure, uko yafashwe, uko yashimuswe mu buryo butemewe n'amategeko, akajyanwa mu gihugu cy'u Rwanda ku buryo butemewe n'amategeko, yagerayo ntiyerekwe itangazamakuru, bakamumarana iminsi, bakamwerekana ari kuvuga, bamuvugisha ibintu, bakamwambura uburenganzira we kugira ngo we n'umuryango we bumvikane ku bazamuhagararira. Ibyo bintu byose rero nibyo byaciye leta y'u Rwanda intege, ntabwo yari kubicika. Nta kuntu Maître Ndruke we yavuze ko ngo leta y'u Rwanda yarenze umurongo utukura ku byerekeranye n'amategeko ndetse n'imibanire ya leta n'Ububiligi. Ibyo ni umunyamategeko nyine uvuye mu Rwanda, ariko tuzabigarukaho, tuzabivuga, kuko nabumvishije iyi nkuru bikiri mu bushyuhe, ariko ubundi kuyisesengura tuzabikora, ndabibasezeranije. Ndagira rero ngo dusoze ibiganiro byacu, tubisoreze ahangaha, tudashidikanya ko byabanogeye, kuko biba byategura mu rukundo kandi byateguwe ari mwebwe muzirikanwa hakurikije ibyo muba mwatubwiye n'ubushake bwanyu. Mujye mukomeza rero mu butugezeho, mutwandikire ku mbuga zacu. Ngewe Aloyize Simpunga wabateguriye ibiganiro, wanabibagejejeho, nkambashimiye kandi basezeyeho ngira nti mubane n'Imana naho utaha, kandi ngasoza n'abasezeraho nashimira bagenzi banjye bose bo kuri radiyo Urumuri bamfashije muri ibi biganiro by'uyu munsi, barimo na Emmanuel Senga nyine umaze kutugezaho amakuru y'uyu munsi. Ijoro ryiza n'abagiye kuryama, mugire ibihe byiza namwe abakiri mu munsi, mwese Imana ibarinde kandi ibahe umugisha, tuzabonana ejo.
nusiba kumva radiyo urumuri uzabeshwa byinshi.
iyi radiyo mwumva ni radiyo urumuri,
ijwi rya sosiyete sivile nyarwanda,
ijwi rya buri munyarwanda.
nusiba kumva radiyo urumuri uzabeshwa byinshi.